Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Met His Alternate Universe Self? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Monday? Eraserhead. Shota froze abruptly, spinning around to where the voice had come from. He's perched on the edge of a building, high enough up that people don't tend to notice him, especially at this hour. He's honestly a bit surprised by the voice, his gaze instantly dropping to the direction of the call. The voice comes from the ground, a darkened alleyway. There's no lighting, and from this distance he can hardly make out anything below, even when he squints. The thing is, he doesn't get identified. Never in his life had his hero name been called out randomly when he's on patrol. Villains know his name, but not his face or costume, and heroes on similar routes wouldn't call out to him. Someone, whoever this is, knows him when they shouldn't. They know him enough to know his name, and be able to match it to his costume, to know his patrol route. Nothing about this was normal. He doesn't call back, just keeps silent until a figure, fairly small, emerges from the shadows. He sees the calculating tilt of the figure's head just barely as he, judging by the voice, PPS his attention back and forth appearing formulating. Shota still doesn't announce his presence any more than already announced. He has no idea who this person is, even if the voice is faintly familiar. That, though, means nothing to a hero. Not every voice he hears is that of a friend, even if this one does sound friendly. Shota recoils in surprise, almost losing his footing as he jarks to his full height, when the small figure lights up with sparks of green. It's obviously a quirk, but like no quirk Shota has seen before. It's almost blinding how the lightning coils around the small figure as if it's coursing through his veins. Shota watches stunned as whoever this is bounces swiftly between the building Shota is perched on and the neighboring building like a game of Pong. When the person was close enough to the top, they took one last quirk-enhanced leap before landing with precision on the side of Shota's building and scaling the rest of the way up until he could pull himself up over the ledge. The figure wheezes when he's finally got both feet on the rooftop, hunched over as he is in a couple deep breaths. "Am so glad I found you. I've been looking for hours." The voice is young, Shota knows that much. The small stature makes it obviously clear that this is a teenager, probably no older than his own first-year students. Shota can't help but wonder what this teenager is doing out at this time, using a quirk no less. Does he not know the laws? Shota squints once again at the figure, finally able to take him in as he's bathed in the pale moonlight. The child wears green, a full suit of green with black detailing. It's one solid piece, and it's ripped and torn, dirty. There's a hood on the green costume, but it's almost completely torn in two. Still, Shota spies dark green curls hidden behind torn fabric. He frowns as he takes the child in completely. It almost looks like a hero costume, maybe, but there's absolutely no way this kid is a licensed hero. He's far too young. But he also isn't a student that Shota knows. He's doubtful the teen is older than 15, and Yui is the only hero school in the radius. This kid is definitely not a 1A or a 1B student. And if he were, he'd know that quirk usage is prohibited. Still, he can't ignore the fact it looks like this child has been in a fight quite recently. He wouldn't be surprised if he was injured or bruised beneath that costume. The teacher and pro-hero tug at the cautious part of Shota's thoughts until, "What happened to you?" Despite staring at Shota, the teenager startles before releasing a breath when he's addressed. He rubs at the back of his neck before pausing, almost as if the question finally hits him. The calmness in the boy's face jolts to something more nervous and cautious. Don't you remember? The fight? The villain? I saw you doing crowd control. Remember? Shota PPS an eyebrow, arms crossing over his chest. He doesn't know what the kid's getting at, but he hasn't been in a fight tonight, and certainly not with whoever this is. "Kid, I don't even know you. And there's no way in hell I'd be in a fight with someone like you. You're a literal child." "Why don't?" The kid is in a shaky breath, reaching up to rake his fingers through dirty green curls. Shota furrows his brow as the child takes a shaky step back away from him, but doesn't try to leave. You don't remember. It's me, Eraserhead. It's Midoriya. Midoriya. The name rings a bell, honestly. But he can't put his finger on why. Please, the child begs desperately, you've gotta remember. I'm Midoriya, sensei, Midoriya Izuku. Please, you know me. Please tell me you remember me. The name clicks into place and Shota feels his lip curl in disgust. What the hell is this? What kind of ruse is this? What kind of a setup? What the hell does this guy have planned here? What's his angle? Shota knows that name. God, there isn't a pro who doesn't at this point. Shota sneers at the teenager across from him. His defense raises like the hairs on the back of his neck as he glares steadily, ready and waiting for whatever will come from this encounter. He narrows his gaze when the teen shifts. Just the thought of sharing this rooftop with Japan's most notorious villain makes his skin prickle. Deku. Why yes. The teenager cries out in relief, taking a small step towards Shota. I'm Deku. I'm so glad you. Deku. Shota growls darkly, flicking out his capture weapon hastily to snag the villain before he can make his move. He's quick to tug it taut, leaving no room for Deku to escape. You're under arrest. And what? W8. Tuesday? Deku doesn't say a thing. They're at the station now. He dragged the villain there himself, not trusting waiting for any backup or a police issue. The faster he had Deku really contained, the better for the entirety of Japan. Now, Deku is contained in quirk-canceling cuffs, cuffed to the table in one of the interrogation rooms. He looks, well, scared is what Shota would say. It's not fear of being arrested and detained, it's more genuine fear. A genuine fear that Shota can't place. Shota stands behind the two-way glass with Tsukachi, both of them watching the teenager intently. Deku hasn't spoken since his arrival at the station, just kept his head ducked as he wrings his hands together nervously. The teen tugs and prods at his own hands, and it frankly looks like it hurts. This is Deku? Tsukachi asks at Shota's side, eyes studying the child as his lips curl downwards into a small frown. I expected him to be, I don't know, angrier? To have more attitude? He's been caught. I mean, he's not even smug about it. I expected more smart responses. He just looks defeated. Terrified, Shota adds with a grimace. He shakes his own frown away, forcing his features back to indifference as he crosses his arms over his chest. Yeah, that's really Deku. Midoriya Izuku. He introduced himself. Confirmed who he was. That's him. No doubt. Tsukachi crosses his own arms over his chest, frown deepening as he finally tears his gaze away from the teenager locked to the table in the room. Something doesn't feel right here, Eraser. That much Shota can agree with. This is weird. This whole thing. Deku searching for him. Deku basically turning himself in. Deku had put up almost no resistance when trapped in Shota's capture weapon. He hadn't squirmed, or seemed surprised after that initial shock of it constricting around him. It didn't make sense because everyone always tried to wriggle out of his scarf, and it was always a futile effort. But Deku hadn't. He'd just slumped into its hold and gave up entirely. He'd given up before even trying, like he knew it was useless to even entertain the idea of escaping. But how could he know? The more he sees of this kid, the more questions he has. Upon arrival, after being cuffed and released from the capture weapon, the pouches on Deku's utility belt had been emptied and examined. He'd been patted down like any criminal, and the teen had been so close to tears Shota had almost wanted to promise it would be all right. He didn't. This is still Deku, the villain who'd brought the world of heroics to its knees in nothing more than a year. The villain who's had a hand in ending dozens of heroes' careers, and who'd assisted Shigaraki with his attacks on Yui, endangering Shota's kids on more than one occasion. They hadn't found a lot of things on his persons, but there was a Yui ID card, one that Shota knows doesn't exist. It's a fake, it has to be, but he'd still spent a good hour staring down at Midoriya Izuku's smiling little face trying to figure out how it was faked. How something fake could be so realistic. When they'd found the card, Shota had gotten into contact with Nizu, because who else was there to call except for the smartest creature in all of Japan, who just so happened to be the Yui principal. If anyone would be able to tell how Deku managed to make such a realistic school ID card, it would be him. As expected, the rodent had been intrigued by not only the situation itself, but by the forged ID card that not even one of Nizu's teachers could debunk. The rat had promised to make his way over to the station, and Shota doesn't doubt that he'll be arriving shortly. Do you think something happened to him? Shota draws his attention from the team to glance at Tsukachi. The detective isn't looking at Shota, eyes still narrowed on Deku. Not sure, Shota frowns. His arrest was weird, I can't deny that. There could be some ulterior motive, I wouldn't put it past Deku to have a plan in motion, I just can't figure out why he'd risk being arrested. Then again, it could be something like amnesia, or a quirk's influence maybe, whatever it is, we should be thankful for it. It's a much safer place with him off the streets, heroes can finally have some peace of mind. I don't know, Tsukachi finally looks away from Deku, it feels too easy eraser. Deku has hardly let us see him, he's a behind-the-scenes kind of guy. This seems too good to be true. Shota shrugs, but the thought nags at him too. They watch Deku intently as they wait. The teen doesn't move. He doesn't look up at his surroundings, look for an escape or diversion. He keeps his head ducked. The only movements they can see are how he's fidgeting anxiously with his own fingers, tugging almost subconsciously at the cuffs. Deku hasn't seen anyone since he'd been scritted into the room and cuffed to the table. He hadn't put up any fight, has simply settled tensely in the chair and hovered his cuffed hands over the table to be cuffed in place, like he knew the procedure. Neither Shota or Tsukachi leave the window until Nizu arrives. After warm greeting from the rodent, Tsukachi leads Nizu into his office, where Deku's utility belt, belongings and ID card are sitting. The rodent lets out a pleased hum, taking the card into his paws and examining it closely, both front and back. His whiskers arch forwards as he studies the ID. Finally, Nizu looks away from it, expression unreadable. This is 100% authentic, I'm afraid. Nizu sets the card flat on the desk, leaning away from it with a perturbed expression, no forgery whatsoever. Rather fascinating. It's real, but he's not a student at Yui? Tsukachi blinks in surprise. Indeed, Nizu hums, whiskers twitching. According to the ID card, he's supposed to be a first year this year. The serial number on the card is quite similar to those of the most current 1A students, but I can't say this specific number had been assigned to anyone. Wait, Shota narrows his eyes dangerously, so you're telling me if we tried this card on the Yui gates, the doors would open? Deku has access to the school? To the students? I have no reason to believe they wouldn't. Nizu shrugs, paws clasping together across the small of his back. It is an authentic Yui ID card, Aizawa-kun. But how? The underground hero pushes. Well, that, Aizawa-kun, is the question now, isn't it? Why don't we ask Deku? Nizu suggests brightly, already stepping towards the interrogation room. Tsukachi shoots Shota an unsure look before following after the rodent. Shota himself huffs a breath as he snags the card off the table and follows after them with slumped shoulders. He doesn't imagine this will go well, and the bright glint in Nizu's eyes is never a good thing. He already feels a headache starting. Deku barely looks up when they enter the interrogation room. There are 3 chairs in the room, 2 across from Deku where Tsukachi and Nizu sit, and 1 on the side of the table where Shota plops down. Deku squirms a little where he's still sitting, his cuffs clinking against the metal tabletop as the 2 heroes and detective settle. Deku's eyes flicker briefly over all 3 of them before his gaze is dropping back to his lap. His fingers twitch, and Shota's eyes trail over the scars lining Deku's hands. He wonders where the villain got them all. As far as they're aware, Deku is all brains and no brawn when it comes to his villain work. He doesn't usually get his hands dirty, just supplies the information for others to do so. Good evening, Deku, Nizu chirps with a wide smile. Well, I suppose at this hour, it's good morning, Nevertheless, it's nice to finally be meeting you. I've heard quite a lot about you. Quite the track record you have. Nizu, a tiny, hardly there voice greets back. Deku still isn't looking up, but Shota supposes him talking is better than nothing. Even if he won't face them. The teen sounds drastically different to the kid Shota had met on the rooftop just hours earlier, Nothing but a whisper compared to the Deku Shota had briefly talked to before arresting. Nizu's smile widens as he leans closer. His features are sharp and almost animalistic. Shota almost pities the kid on the receiving end. Almost. So you know me then, Deku? Nizu chirps, genuinely pleased with the fact. I must say, it's rather odd of you to address me as sensei when you're not a student at my school. And I hear you also know Eraserhead quite well. It's strange that you'd address Eraserhead as sensei as well, considering it's not common knowledge that he even teaches at UI. Deku's head ducks down further until his dirty curls are curtaining his eyes. He doesn't say anything. Silence lingers for a long moment. Deku's head is still ducked. Tsukachi is watching the teen with a furrowed brow and that tiny frown, while Nizu is studying the teenager intently, unbothered by the tense silence. Well, Tsukachi clears his throat when it's clear no one else is going to break the silence. You know Eraserhead and Nizu-san then, but you probably don't know me. I'm Detective. Detective Tsukachi, the small voice offers. Your quirk is lie detector. I know you too. That's surprising. Shota probably would have startled if he didn't have years of remaining uninterested under his belt. Tsukachi shifts a bit uncomfortably, while Nizu's grin sharpens into something almost scary. It's clear none of them were expecting that. So, you've strayed from taking down heroes and you're moving on to law enforcement then? Expanding your horizon, or just tired of ruining hero careers solely? Shota asks drily, eyes narrowed on the kid. He's not sure what he's expecting, but it certainly isn't for the boy's head to shoot up, genuine disbelief in his expression. His mouth hangs open, and he stares blankly into Shota's own eyes. The kid swallows thickly like all the moisture in his mouth and throat sapped out of him in surprise. I do what? Shota and Tsukachi share a quick look, but Nizu doesn't tear his eyes away from Deku. Black beady eyes watch the child sharply, almost calculatingly. You seem surprised by that, Deku. Tears are welling in the teenager's eyes, and Shota frowns at the sight. Villains don't tend to cry. Frankly, anger is the emotion that tends to surface more often than not. Anger and desperation. He supposes that this villain is also a teenager, but still. He'd never expected Deku to cry. Honestly, the kid just couldn't be farther from the Deku he's seen and heard about. From the stories and whispers he hears from the rumor mill about the green-haired villain ruining lives without so much as lifting a hand. Nizu blinks in surprise when he notices as well, but besides that there's no tell the rodent has even acknowledged the tears. Deku is still staring at Shota like he's waiting for the man to tell him it's a joke, like he's praying it is all just one big joke, which it's not. Shota doesn't know what the hell is going on, but it's real. It may not make sense, but it definitely is real. His patience lapses for a second as the teen stares rudely. He's had a long day of teaching and then patrol, and he hadn't even been able to nap during homeroom yesterday morning, considering Kaminari had short-circuited while trying to charge all 18 of his classmates' phones at once. He really doesn't mean to snap out an unimpressed, well, when the teenager takes too long to reply to Nizu. Deku jolts like Shota's voice physically pains him, and then his poorly constructed facade is crumbling as tears trail down his freckled cheeks. He sniffles miserably and curls into himself as much as he can in his restraints. He's blubbering too, loud and heartbreaking in that way only children in true distress can. I didn't do anything. Hiro, I'm not a villain. I'm so sorry. I don't know how I got here. Pooh please sensei, he rattles out in rapid succession, hardly even breathing. There's more too, mutters and mumbles and whines, but those are just what Shota can make out between the sobbing and panic-stuttered breaths. He hates how the fear in the teen's voice sounds genuine enough that it curls unpleasantly in Shota's stomach. Tsukachi must feel the same if the pinch of unsure distress in his face is anything to go off. They let the child work his way through his emotions. For a second, Shota really wants to help the kid. He's been a teacher too long to not feel his heart crumble at the utter distress, but Nizu holds up a hand that stops him in place. He grits his teeth, but doesn't move any further than shifting in his seat. He doesn't agree with letting the child verge on passing out from lack of breathing as he sobs, but now is not the time to go against Nizu's orders. He has to keep reminding himself that this is Deku. Deku who'd aided in attacks on Yui, like the UA. It takes a while, but soon Deku is calming down. The sobs settle into slight sniffles, and his head is ducked once again, hiding away tear-stained cheeks and red eyes. He wiggles around enough to be able to wipe his wet cheeks on his shoulders, and winces minutely as he does so. Deku is quiet for another long second. The only thing heard is his stuttered breaths from the crying episode until, "I don't belong here." It's a quiet admission, and Shota has to strain to hear it. "Is that so?" Nizu hums, clasping his fingers together and settling his paws on the tabletop. "You know, Deku, you're right. You won't be here long, I'm afraid. You've done some terrible, terrible things. Hurt people, killed others. There's a special place in Tartarus for people like you." Shota thinks that might be a little harsh. It's true, sure, but the kid had literally just cried to the point he couldn't breathe. Nizu isn't one for knowing human emotions though, nor is he one for beating around the bush. Still, Shota essays in a surprised breath and tries not to glare at his boss for his bluntness. Deku's face twists up like he's about to start crying again, but he manages through a couple deep breaths. He keeps the tears at bay, but doesn't get rid of them. Slowly, the boy looks towards Tsukachi. "I don't belong here," he repeats softly. Tsukachi looks like he's at a loss, but his face doesn't pinch in that way it does when someone lies to him. The detective draws in an unsteady breath. "Where do you belong, Deku?" I. The teen swallows down his wobbly voice. "I don't know. But it's not here. I'm not. This isn't where I'm supposed to be. I'm not a villain, I'm a hero. I have my provisional license, but I don't know where it is." "Deku," Shota speaks again, softening his voice just slightly. Unlike Nizu, he will alter his voice for the sake of calming the kid, villain or not, he's still a child. Deku slowly drags his attention to Shota where his body wilts and his bottom lip wobbles. Shota slips the ID card from his pocket and sets it down on the table. He slides it towards the teenager as he continues, "Where did you get this?" His lip wobbles even more. "Why gave it to me, sensei? I'm in class 1A. "I didn't," Shota tells him. "You did," Deku cries out desperately. "You did, sensei, you really did. I know you don't believe me, but I'm not lying." "I'm not lying, am I, Detective Tsukachi?" "He's not," Tsukachi hums under his breath, glancing between the two pros. "We've never actually met, Deku," Shota tells him quietly, because they haven't. He's honestly never really met Deku. He's seen him in passing, he's seen Deku with the League, but they haven't met. And he sure as hell has never given the kid a school ID, not when the kid isn't even in his class. Deku is a villain. "I don't belong here," the boy warbles, and he's starting to sound like a broken record. "Why are my sensei, my homeroom sensei? You W-wrapped me in your capture weapon and told me I couldn't be a hero on my first day of school. During the quirk apprehension test, and I proved you wrong. You said last place would be expelled, but you called it a logical ruse. I was in last place and you still didn't expel me. You almost died protecting us at the USJ, and you live in the dorms with us in Heights Alliance. Why you stopped Kaken from attacking me on the first day, and every time since. Please, Aizawa-sensei, please believe me. I don't want to do this alone." Shota's heart cracks as the kid speaks. None of that happened. Well, some of it did, but not like how Deku is saying. It hasn't, Shota would know, but the kid is all but begging, and he's staring at Shota with such a kicked puppy look. "Midoriya-kun," Deku sniffles as he forces his watery eyes onto Nizu. Tsukachi glances over too, and even Shota looks towards the rodent when he uses the teen's name instead of his villain name. "You say you don't belong here, but how did you get here?" Deku quiets down, staring thoughtfully down at the table. His hands ring together, and he tugs at his fingers. Shota has half a mind to reach out and set his hand over Deku's to stop it, but he keeps to himself. Finally, the teen says in a breath, "I don't really know. I was on patrol with Togata-senpai for my internship and there was a villain attack, I think. I don't remember it very well. I think I got hit maybe? I don't know, but I woke up here, and I knew that I was close to where Sun-sensei patrols and you were there too, so I thought if anyone could help me, you would be you, Aizawa-sensei, and I just The child chokes on his own breath, forehead dropping down onto his cuffed hands. I didn't know what to do. I'm scared, sensei, and I want to go home and… Shota can't take it anymore. He can't sit back and watch this child fall apart all over again. He can't ignore a desperate plea. He can't watch the child fend his way through a second panic attack in as many minutes. The kid is going to pass out because he's just not breathing. He's moving before he even realizes it, crouching gracefully at the child's side. He puts a gentle hand on the teen's knee and leans a little bit closer to the child so his soft words are heard. Hey, calm down a bit. It's all right, Midoriya-kun. It's okay. The teen turns slightly towards him with an unrivaled urgency, and Shota's shocked when the teen's forehead rams against his chest, just under his chin, desperately. His automatic response is to wrap around the teen, hand cradling the back of the teen's head as he sobs. I'm sorry, Deku cries out, pushing his face into Shota's capture weapon, muffling the wail of mumbles. I know you're not my sensei, but you are, and I'm not who I am to you either. I didn't do anything wrong, but I was arrested, and I'm cuffed to the table like a villain, and I don't like it. I'm a hero, I'm not your Deku. Everything's different, but it's the same, but it's not the same too. Not really. And I'm just so scared of sensei. I don't know what to do. Sure. Shota lets the hand not on the kid's head settle between his shoulder blades, rubbing light circles. Take a breath, Midoriya-kun. We'll figure it out. You're okay yet? You need to take some deep breaths, just follow me, alright? Shota takes a couple of modeling deep breaths, and the kid, a literal child, tries to match them through his own gaspy inhales. The teen sniffles, and Shota just knows there's tears and spit and snot on his costume, but he can't be bothered to care. He's been covered in worse things anyways. Good, he praises quietly, just loud enough for the shaking child to hear. Good job, Midoriya-kun. Deep breaths, just like that. It takes a good while for Midoriya's breathing to even out enough that Shota's not afraid he'll pass out on them. Midoriya seems content to just settle against Shota as much as he can while still cuffed to the steel table, face buried in the man's shoulder and capture weapon. He's twisted at an odd angle, but he doesn't seem to care all that much. Shota catches Tsukachi's gaze over the table, the detective wearing a deep frown. The man's eyes drift down to where only green curls can be seen before lifting back to Shota's face, expression graver. There wasn't a single lie in what the teen had said, spouting everything from being Deku to not being their Deku. It's true. He's still trying to wrap his brain around that one, honestly. Nizu is just thoughtfully tapping a finger against the tabletop, scrutinizing gaze scanning Midoriya calmly. The rodent's attention flickers to the ID card every so often before settling back on the teenager. When Midoriya finally pulls back, Shota follows his lead, leaning away and sitting back on his haunches. The teen makes a feeble attempt at drying his own face on his shoulder again, before he's ducking his head like he's almost embarrassed. The teen is silent for a second, before offering a sheepish, I'm sorry. Shota frowns, narrowing his eyes at the cried-out-looking kid. Problem child, we both know there's nothing to apologize for. And to Shota's stupefied shock, the child's eyes water once again. Just this time, instead of tears falling, the teen lets out a sniffly snort of laughter. Sorry, he adds again, lips flickering up into a tiny smile. Just, my Aizawa-sensei calls me that too. Parallels or whatever, I guess. Parallels, Nizu hums thoughtfully, looking at Midoriya. You have to understand that concept, Midoriya-kun, is a little bit hard to believe. Midoriya gives a slow nod as Shota finally pushes himself up and flops back into his chair, worried eyes tracking over the teenager. The boy lets out a faint sigh. I know, Nizu-sensei, I don't quite believe it either, but I kinda have to. Things are different, you all are, but not really different. Do you think there's any way to prove this, Midoriya-kun? Tsukachi asks softly. I know there is some very compelling evidences to support this theory, the ID card for one, but, like Nizu said, this is hard to believe. Well, Midoriya frowns, fingers ringing together once again. I mean, I'm not completely sure how things have changed from my, time. Reality, Nizu corrects not unkindly. It still is, technically, your time. According to your student ID card at least. We have to assume that both of our worlds run the same time and date, just with minor obscurities. Right from my reality then. And maybe you can ask questions about yourselves that Deku wouldn't know, and I'll answer if I know it about my senseis and detective. Well, Nizu hums thoughtfully, that's a thought, I suppose. Assuming that our realities aren't different. I suppose the first question should be who your classmates are? You're a 1A student. I find it unlikely that the 1A roster would have changed much from reality to reality. Oh, Midoriya blinks thoughtfully. Okay, sure. Do I go seating order or just off the top of my head? Seating order ideally, Shota shrugged, interested in pushing just that little bit more. There's no way Deku would be able to list the students in their arranged seating, even if he could name them all. Sure, Midoriya nods. Well, starting at number 1 we have Aoyama, followed by Ishido, Azui, Ida, and Uraraka. Then we have Ojiro, Kaminari, Kirishima, Koji, and Satu. Students 11 through 15 are Shoji, Jairu, Siro, Tokoyami, and Todoroki, and then we have the last row which is Hagakure, Bakugu, me, and then Yaoyorozu. That's only 19, Shota tells him with a pet eyebrow. You said I never expelled anyone. Oh yeah, Mineta, Midoriya winces, pulling at his own thumb. You didn't on the first day, but he didn't last long. When we all moved into Heights Alliance after Bakugu got kidnapped by the League of Villains, you caught him peeping in the girls' communal showers. You, expelled him instantly and skirted him out in your capture weapon. I think the detective got involved as well, but you never really explained past the promise he wouldn't bother anyone anymore, and that you were sorry you let it carry on for as long as you did, even though you didn't know. Shota leans back in his seat, eyeing the teenager. That was scarily similar to his current roster. Midoriya looks up with hopeful green eyes. Was that close? To your class, I mean. Fairly, Shota squints at the teen. All of the students you listed were in fact on my roster. However, Mineta was expelled within the first week, and you, for obvious reasons, were never on my roster. I have 19 students currently though. It looks like Midoriya wants to ask who took his spot in 1A, but wisely decides not to. That doesn't stop the kid from smiling widely though. Just like my Aizawa-sensei. The teen chirps, and for the first time since Deku had been cuffed, Shota sees the teenager from the rooftop who'd parkoured his way up to him. That's really cool. I mean, even in both realities, Mineta was expelled. He deserved it after some of the awful things he said. The girls always felt so uncomfortable around him. Midoriya-kun. Tsukachi draws the teen's attention back. How do you know me? Oh. Midoriya smiles lightly. Well, I met you after the USJ attack. Some of my classmates and I helped All Might fight the Nomu, and I broke a few bones, so I was in the infirmary with All Might and Recovery Girl when you came in. You're friends with All Might in this reality too, right? The three men stare, none even going as far as to breathe as the kid talks. Midoriya knew All Might in his reality? Midoriya knew Tsukachi knew All Might? Deku knew All Might? Then, of course, there was the mall incident when Shigaraki tried to kill me with his quirk. That was after Ida, Todoroki, and I fought the hero killer, Stain. But wait. I don't know if I should have said that. It's classified. Wait, does Stain exist in your reality? Tsukachi gives a very slow nod. Good, I mean, not good of course, but I'm glad that's another similarity. Anyways, I don't think I really actually met Detective Tsukachi until after Shigaraki tried to kill me at the mall. Well, I guess technically he just threatened to kill me, but I did think I was gonna die. Then you brought me to the police station for questioning and we talked a bit. It's just then that Midoriya seems to realize no one said a thing. That the two pros and the detective are silently staring at him, studying him. Fear floods the kid's face as he audibly swallows. Did I say something wrong? No. Shota clears his throat, heart thrumming in his chest. Midoriya swears he's his student, but what the F kind of teacher is his Aizawa if all that shit happened to one of his students? Their timelines are the same, it's only been a couple months of school. Of course not just. There's a lot to unpack there. The teen lets out a tiny exhale that sounds suspiciously like an O. Midoriya-kun, Nizu's voice is oddly clipped. You know All Might? Yeah. The teen grins, nodding enthusiastically. He's a part-time teacher at my UI, when he's not busy with his hero work, at least. He teaches foundational hero studies, and he's sorta like my mentor, I guess. I met him way before school started and he helped me get ready for UI and why are you all looking at me like that? Your reality's All Might isn't retired, Midoriya-kun? Tsukachi asks slowly, which prompts an equally as slow shake of the head from the teenager. Well no, I mean yes, he is now. But he wasn't until a very recent fight, after Bakugo got kidnapped. Is your All Might retired? He is, Nizu answers carefully. What happened to him? Midoriya looks between the three of them cautiously. You did. Shota answers softly, not beating around the bush. Shota's not sure he's ever seen heartbreak spread across someone's face as quickly as it does Midoriya. The teen is in a few breaths that sound deep, but rattled with panic as he finally manages a shaky exhale of, W? Shota blows out a sigh, leaning forwards. Deku happened, he corrects. Deku somehow found out that All Might was gravely injured in a fight a while back. A fight he never fully recovered from. Deku realized that All Might wasn't what he used to be and that his power wasn't that of when he was younger due to his chronic injuries. Deku told some villains, the League of Villains specifically. We think that was his into the group, but we didn't know until recently that Deku was the one to spill All Might's secret. He's a full teacher, Nizu continues easily, after the public found out that he had these limitations from that fight, that they didn't believe he could protect them as he once has. It was a forced retirement, more or less, but he still helps out a lot with activities for our heroic students. He just doesn't do very much public hero work. Truthfully, it gave Yagi-san more time to focus on other things. His successor, Midoriya whispers in understanding. Shota doesn't know what that means, but Tsukachi and Nizu both snap their attention to the boy. You know about that? Tsukachi asks seriously, and all Midoriya does is give the faintest of nods as he bites his bottom lip. Nizu and Tsukachi share a glance. Shota feels his irritation tick upwards at being the only one out of the loop. How this child from an alternate reality knew more than he did was beyond him. Nizu's eyes drift down to where Midoriya is still wringing his hands together, tugging nervously at his own fingers. The rodent's eyes lift, and there's an almost knowing in those black eyes. So those quirk suppression cuffs are. Another quick nod from Midoriya that has the principal cutting himself off with a thoughtful tilt of his head. I see. Nizu nods to himself, before baring his teeth in a challenging smile at Shota. Well, Tsukachi and I need to have a word about all of this. Aizawa-kun, are you alright watching Midoriya-kun? Yeah, the man huffs. Wonderful. Nizu grins, standing himself and ushering Tsukachi up as well. They both walk towards the door. Will only be a moment. Wait, Midoriya calls as the two make their way to the door. Both pause in the doorway, looking back at the child, even if Midoriya is staring down at his own lap. I know this is a lot to ask, but could I maybe have the cuffs off? I won't do anything and Sensei can erase my quirk if I do try anything, which I won't. They just, well, I have some CR chronic pain and it really, the teen swallows, chewing on his bottom lip, it hurts. Shota glances towards his colleagues, waiting to see who takes the bait. He doesn't doubt Midoriya does have chronic pain if the scars decorating his hands and arms are any indication, but he really doesn't expect Nizu to be the one to cave. Of course. Apologies, Midoriya-kun. Tsukachi hesitates for just a moment before slipping his hand into his pocket where he pulls out 2 keys, tossing them both at Shota. The underground hero catches them using nothing more than instinct as they barrel at his face, shooting a half-hearted glare at the detective, who's smiling smugly. Just like that. Shota blinks when the answer catches up to him. He stares down at the keys in his hand, unsure. He'd expected more. More questions from Nizu, more hesitance from Tsukachi. As bad as it sounds, Shota hadn't expected instant agreement. Was Shota missing something here? Just like that, Nizu chortles. Not to worry, Aizawa-kun. I really do doubt the boy will try anything, and if he does, you have full permission to handle him as you please. I'm sure he knows what you're capable of. Now, if you will see to helping Midoriya-kun out of those suppressor cuffs, Aizawa-kun, the detective and I'll return shortly. The door shuts after the detective and the principal, and Shota can't help but glare at it. He hates being out of the loop, and it's his biggest pet peeve when Nizu pulls sheet like this. That cryptic, chaotic rat. Why you can leave them on if you want, sensei. The teen's whisper draws him from his irritation, and Shota's heart drops into his stomach when the words register. Had the kid thought he was upset at the thought of freeing him, instead of the actual irritation he feels for his boss? No, he drawls softly, already leaning over to try and find the keyhole he needs. I'm sorry, kid. I was just a bit lost in thought. It's fine, really. We'll take them off if they're hurting you. I trust one won't need to use my quirk or my capture weapon on you. Sorry you've had to wear them this long, if they've been hurting you. I understand why. Better safe than sorry, right? Midoriya watches as Shota leans forwards to slip the first key into the hidden keyhole. It'll deactivate the cuffs, and then Shota will be able to use the second key to unlock them and release him. I am a villain here. Deku's a villain here, Shota corrects as he finally unlocks the cuffs. Midoriya is quick to draw his hands to his chest where he rubs at his wrists with a wince. You're not, Midoriya-kun. You just happen to share a name and a face with him. Now here, let me see your wrists. It surprises Shota when the kid doesn't hesitate at all, just offers up his wrists for Shota to inspect. They're raw and inflamed, and Shota almost winces at the sight. He can imagine the pain the kid must be in, especially after hours of the HNTFFS holding his wrists in place and rubbing the skin raw. The underground hero takes both of the boy's hands into his own hands and carefully massages his thumbs into the old scars. Midoriya tenses briefly before relaxing under the careful touch. Shota feels almost sick when he notices the awe sparkling in Midoriya's green eyes. How'd you get hurt so bad anyways? Shota can't help but ask. These are some serious wounds, even healed. It's cause for concern, really. Shota can even make out that a healing quirk was used and they still look like this. Destructive quirk, Midoriya offer with a weary smile. I break my bones a lot when I use it, needed surgery after the sports festival and everything. I have more control now, but it was bad for a while. And I haven't helped with this? I mean, the me from your reality. You do help. Midoriya shakes his head, eyes watching Shota's thumbs press into his muscles. You try your best, but there are 19 of us and we're... The teen bites his lip, smiling sheepishly, a bit of a handful? Handful or not, I clearly don't try hard enough. Shota fires back, gesturing to the boy's wrists with a JRK of his chin, that, or your reality's me Esigus at his job. There's gotta be an alternative somewhere to you breaking your bones when you try to use your quirk. And, speaking of, I've gotta ask, strictly for my own curiosity, if your quirk was still this destructive by the time you hit high school, did you not have any quirk counseling or quirk training to try and get this under control growing up? The boy looks away guiltily, and Shota almost stops massaging. He lets the silence carry on for a second before taking a slightly sterner tone he hopes that Midoriya's Aizawa uses too. That no-nonsense tone that demands an answer, Midoriya-kun. No, the child shakes his head, I'm a late bloomer. Shota lets that sink in, trying not to let anything show on his face. How late? Shota narrows his eyes, thumbs pausing as he waits for an answer. For a second, Shota's worried about the Deku of their reality suddenly manifesting a highly destructive quirk that would only add to how dangerous he is. But if this Midoriya already had a quirk, then theirs would too, right? If he had a quirk, at least. There hasn't even been a whisper of Deku having any sort of quirk, and his records were still the same, diagnosed quirkless. The X-rays on his file of his pinky toe joint don't lie. It would be a literal miracle for Deku to develop a quirk. Shota doesn't know how one can have a quirk while the other is quirkless, but he also doesn't know how there can be two Midoriyas in the same reality. Best not look too closely, lest he give himself a migraine in an attempt to understand. He should just be happy their Deku is quirkless still. Shota can't imagine someone like him having a quirk too. That would probably mean the end of mankind entirely or something. The teenager's face contorts to a grimace that draws Shota away from his thoughts. The day of the entrance exam? It was a bit of a forced manifestation, I suppose? Shota can already see it, this bright young face with a literal new quirk stepping into that arena. Assuming his entrance exam wasn't much different than theirs, Shota esikes in a breath as he paints a picture in his mind. Don't tell me you went for the 0-pointer. Midoriya gives a pained laugh that's accompanied by an almost cheeky smile. I won't tell you then, sensei. Have I ever told you you're a brat? Shota huffs out, unable to stop the small smile threatening to grace his face. It's wiped away as fast as it appears when a thought hits him. He stills completely, lifting his eyes to watch the teenager. Midoriya-kun. I don't know, do I? The teen looks away again, and Shota forces his thumbs back to work when the boy gives a half-hearted attempt to tug his hands back. Shota looks down at the damaged wrists in his hold, thumbing over some of the worst scars. He already has a sick feeling in his stomach that he doesn't know this very important detail about Midoriya in the teenager's reality, that this happened because he didn't know and never really helped. He stares until a soft voice breaks the silence. No, sensei, you don't. Shota gives a careful nod, taking care to not let any emotions flicker in his expression. I see. They settle into silence once again, Shota rubbing carefully over the teenager's wrists, as Midoriya watches intently. The teen studies Shota's rotations as his features slowly soften, the pain ebbing away as he continues. Finally, when Shota's sure he'd given most of the scarred tissue and swollen joints enough attention, he pulls his hands away. Midoriya pulls his hands back when Shota's grip loosens, and he stares in awe at his hands. They don't hurt as much anymore. The boy smiles brightly, jabbing his own thumb against the swollen joint in a way that makes Shota wince. Thank you, sensei. Shota waves a dismissive hand tiredly. Let me know if they act up again. Chronic pain is a beach, but that doesn't mean you have to suffer with it. Midoriya giggles, and it's then that Shota realizes he probably shouldn't be cussing. Midoriya isn't his student, or he is, but he's not. He's not Shota's directly. He decides that it's a problem for Midoriya's Aizawa to deal with, assuming they're relatively the same, at least. Besides, the kid's a teenager, he's probably heard much worse. It's a little strange talking to you in this context, Midoriya offers softly. Shota lets his head loll in the direction of the teenager, noting how Midoriya has curled up in his chair, knees drawn up to his chest and arms wrapped around his legs. He looks tired. It's probably got to be nearing late morning now, and Shota just hopes Nizu gave Hisashi a heads up to make sure the students were up and in class. He hopes someone covers his class, but he has a suspicion that Nizu has something in the works. 1A shouldn't be left without supervision, and that's something the entire staff knows. Oh yeah. Shota hums lightly. The kid gives a nod, before turning his head so his cheek is balanced on his knee. I feel like I know more about you than you know about me, since I'm different here, but you're mostly the same. You really are like my Aizawa, just without me, I guess. Shota doesn't know why hearing that makes his heart ache. Why seeing the teenager wilt, with that tiny defeated frown curving his lips as he stares almost unseeingly at the wall, has his heart going out to the poor kid. He can't even begin to understand what's probably going through the kid's head, but it makes something unpleasant coil in his stomach. He desperately wants to fix this for the boy, but there's literally no way. They don't know anything in the grand scheme of things, and if Midoriya was hit with a quirk in his reality that sent him here, they have no means to even figure out how to counter it or get information on the quirk. Hopefully they're working on it on their end. The silence is depressingly loud, and though Shota knows there's not much he can do to help Midoriya, he can help distract him. What's your Aizawa like? He's the best. Midoriya doesn't even take a second to think, and Shota curses the fondness flooding his chest. He's really scary sometimes, but I think it's just for show. He's actually a really good teacher. He's always there when we need him, and he helps us with our quirks and keeps us all in line. Didn't let Kaken get me on the first day of school, even when he didn't think I belonged in his class. I think that's when I knew he was a good guy. He's weird too, but in a good way. I hope that doesn't come off as rude. You're fine, Shota snorts in amusement. I've been called worse. Midoriya lets out a little laugh, finally looking back towards the pro. He pretends not to like us, I think, but we all know he cares. He's still scary, but we all trust him. He was willing to die for us at the USJ, and he really did almost die. He got hurt really badly. There's a distant look in the teen's eyes, but Shota doesn't draw attention to it. From the sound of it, their USJ incident was a lot like Shota's own. He does wonder how Midoriya's interference on either side curved the situation, but he thinks it's probably better to not bring it up. I think. The boy continues after a second, looking at Shota before ducking his head. He's the first teacher I ever really trusted, which is why I came looking for you. Knew you'd help me. He always helps. I'm sorry I didn't help you, Shota offers, swallowing down the lump in his throat. You did. The boy laughs, gesturing to the station interrogation room. Shota fails to see how this has been helpful to Midoriya, but he doesn't dare refute it. And I would have done the same thing if I was in your position, sensei. It was logical, wasn't it? Your Midoriya Izuku is a villain, so you followed your instincts and arrested me. I don't blame you for that. I was scared, yeah, but it was a misunderstanding. That doesn't make it right, Shota huffs. You are innocent and you still spent hours in cuffs. You tried to tell me, but I didn't listen. We didn't listen. There's nothing logical about interrogating a minor until he has 2 panic attacks that could have been avoided when all he's doing is asking for help. I cry a lot anyways, Midoriya offers simply, like that makes up for their brash approach that had thrown his mental stability out the window. The teen shoots Shota a watery smile as he continues. Besides, sensei, we both know villains lie. You couldn't be sure in the moment. I'm glad you didn't trust me at first. If I really was your Deku, you could have gotten hurt. You always tell us to follow our instincts, don't you? It can't be right for us to do that but wrong for you to. You know, Shota drawls, choosing to ignore the teen's defense of their action, it's weird for you to turn my own words around on me when I've never actually taught you. Can't say I like it, you're definitely a problem child, aren't you? Midoriya lets out a loud, surprised burst of laughter. He ducks his head bashfully. My Aizawa-sensei calls me his #1 problem child. I'm still not sure if it's endearment or genuine disbelief. That, Shota grins sharply, finding the humor in the teen's words, sounds about right. Midoriya let out another bout of giggles. Shota tries really hard not to let his manic grin soften to a regular smile, but he knows he fails. Midoriya lets out a small huff when his laughter subsides, and he glances away thoughtfully. I sorta miss my Aizawa, but it feels silly to because you're right here. I'm really glad you're here, even if you're not really my sensei. I don't know if that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with missing your teacher, Shota tells him seriously. This is frankly a pretty effed up situation, and I'm so sorry you're stuck here away from your reality. I'm glad I can be a stand-in for you. I want you to know you're not alone, Midoriya. I'll make DM sure of that while you're here. You may not be my student, but you are my student. Shota blinks as he tries to process that sentence. It had made more sense in his head, and he's not even sure the emphasis he tried to force into it had saved it. He feels his face twisting like he'd eaten a slice of lemon the longer he thinks about it. Midoriya chokes on a laugh. That makes 0 sense at all, but I understand it completely. Shota rolls his eyes, letting out an amused exhale of brat under his breath. Midoriya snickers to himself before he quiets down. He's silent for a second until, thank you though. When Shota looks back towards him, the teen is hiding a smile between his knees. His expression is soft and childish, and just so grateful. He looks so young, and Shota is once again reminded that these students are just children. So, Shota leans back in his chair, eyes lighting up with playful mirth. I'm going to assume the teachers are all mostly the same in both realties. Who's your favorite? I can't answer that. Midoriya squeaks, covering his face with his hands. That feels like it could be offensive. They're your coworkers, probably. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. It's not, Shota hides his smile in his capture weapon. It's not like I'll ever be able to rat you out to your teachers. Besides, it's not offensive because technically, we've never taught you either. Can't be upset by the ranking of a student they're never met let alone taught. Being offended would be illogical. It feels weird to say you to you, Midoriya whines, a blush crawling up his cheeks and all the way to his ears. Just because of that I'll say present Mike. He teaches English here too, right? He's definitely one of my favorites. I love his class. Micah. Shota snorts, that'll definitely go straight to his head. No need to inflate his ego anymore. That's mean, sensei. Midoriya huffs a laugh. Present Mike is really cool though. He's always been one of my favorites. I love his radio show if he has that here. I used to listen to it when I was little. Plus, his quirk is really cool. He mentioned that he had his quirk when he was born, and I can only imagine that was pretty hard to control as a baby. It really is amazing what he can do with it. Then there's all the pitches and frequencies he can do with just his voice, how he can throw his voice around to emulate something or someone and make it sound like it's coming from a different distance and direction. So useful. And I especially think it's cool how he can do it without hearing. Not to mention his cool support gear. Shota blinks, suddenly uncomfortable at the in-depth analysis. Maybe Deku and Midoriya were more similar than he thought. He reels in the thought, and tries to swallow down his nerves. Although Shota knows, realistically, this is nothing more than a starstruck fanboy analysis, he can't help the stones settling in his stomach. This isn't some random analysis by some random person. This is an analysis of Hisashi by someone who looks and sounds like Deku. It's hitting a little too close to home, and no matter how much Shota tries to swallow down the fear, he can't. He knows it's Midoriya he's talking to, a heroic student, but this is exactly how Deku takes heroes out. And he's been talking about Hisashi. Shota draws in a calming breath. He knows this is Midoriya. It's not Deku. But it's still scary. It's still unsettling. Analysis like this can be so dangerous, and it's terrifying that Midoriya seems to possess the skill too, even if he's not using it to harm. Are you sure you're not Deku? Shota asks drily when he finally calms his raging heartbeat. It's meant to be a joke to ease his own worries, but it's no surprise when it backfires spectacularly. No! Midoriya jolts in fear, and Shota instantly feels bad. I'm not. I promise, I'm sorry, I didn't. I'm kidding, Shota frowns, leaning back in his chair as he makes a mental note to not do that again. Sorry, that was insensitive. I know you're not, kid, I was just surprised. No one knows that Mick's nearly entirely deaf. Not even most of the teachers. Oh, Midoriya breathes, wide eyes watching Shota cautiously. It's not, I don't know. I doubt my classmates have realized. I just sorta pieced it together, I guess. I mean, he's always wearing his headphones, so I assume there's some sort of hearing support in there, and I've seen you and Yamada-sensei using JSL. You're both fluent in it, right? We are, Shota PPS an eyebrow. It just makes sense, Midoriya continues after one last suspicious look at Shota. You are married after all. You'd need to be able to communicate at least a bit with each other if his wasn't wearing his support gear or, well, I assume he must wear hearing aids at home and out of costumes, right? Well, no matter, my point still stands. And what? What the F dash? What do you mean? Shota's mouth has gone dry. How does Midoriya know that? Their marriage is the closest kept secret. Information like that is dangerous, and to know that Deku, no Midoriya, because they clearly are not the same person even if they look, think, sound the same, but still, it sends sparks of panic through his entire being that Deku knows he's married to Hisashi, dear lord. He knows it's unfair to lump the villain and the teenager before him into the same category, but it's so hard not to. They are literally the same person just. Somewhere along the line Deku turned to villainy, while Midoriya turned to heroics. Shota somehow manages to rein in his frantic heart rate, blinking slowly at the teenager. He's still shocked. This is something that only their parents and families, their close friends and the UE staff know. That's it. They keep this secret guarded. They don't wear wedding bands, and all their intimacy is strictly behind closed doors. They're careful and don't take unnecessary risks. Shota doesn't know the Aizawa from Midoriya's reality, but if they really are almost the exact same person, he knows his marriage would also be closely guarded. They may not have a Deku in their world, but other villains are just as dangerous when it comes to personal and sensitive information. So to reiterate, what the F dash? What? Midoriya squeaks, rearing away from Shota frantically. Oh, he breaths. Oh no, are you and Mike-sensei not together here? That's probably so awkward for you. I'm so sorry. Oh God, I need think before I speak. I'm sore. Stop, Shota groans, letting his head fall back so he can glare up at the ceiling. Midoriya's jaw snaps shut, teeth audibly clinking together as he does so. Stop for a second. You're fine, Midoriya, and for the love of all things holy, please stop apologizing for everything. You're not on trial anymore, we believe you're not from here. Oh, the child breathes out, and when Shota glances back towards him, he can see fear sparkling in his gaze. I'm sore, I mean all right. Now, I never said you were wrong, Shota huffs, though his skin prickles anxiously. But I also never said you were right. How did you come to that conclusion? Unless someone said something to you? No, Midoriya shakes his head, swallowing roughly. No one told us. We just sorta assumed? Some of us, at least. Not a lot of people know. Most of my classmates don't, I don't think. We figured it out ourselves. Explain, Shota huffs. Well, Midoriya puckers his lips thoughtfully. It wasn't too hard to figure out. I mean, you wear a chain around your neck with your wedding band, or, I assume you do too, because my Aizawa-sensei does. I saw it on the first day when he used his quirk on me. And he doesn't interact with present Mike often. It sorta looks like he doesn't really like Mike-sensei all that much when they do talk, but it's softer, I guess? It's just different from when Aizawa-sensei is annoyed with, like, Midnight-sensei for example. And, Midoriya's cheeks flush brightly. Mike-sensei does spend a lot of time in your apartment above our dorms. I think you two live together more or less, and that Mike-sensei's dorm in the teachers' dormitories is more of a formality? For appearance. And you just figured this all out? Shota's honestly a little impressed. But then again, this kid is the same person as the Deku who'd watched Shota's fighting style for no more than 10 minutes and was able to pinpoint how his quirk worked and his activation tells. Yes, well me and a classmate did, Midoriya shrugs nervously. None of my students know, Shota tells him, pressing his mouth into a line. And Midoriya, the little sheet, gives a cheeky smile. You should ask Todoroki-kun what he thinks if you really believe that. I have a feeling that if he's anything like mine, he probably has at least a suspicion that you and Mike-sensei are together. Shota lets out a quiet hum, studying the teenager across from him. Midoriya fiddles with his own fingers, nervously but nowhere near as rough as he'd been in the past couple hours. So, is it, the same here? In answer, Shota tugs his capture weapon down enough to locate the stainless steel chain around his neck, pulling it out so the golden ring on the end of it is exposed. Hizashi has an identical one, just he'd opted for a gold chain. Midoriya leans forwards to get a closer look. That's so pretty, sensei. Shota lets out a snort of laughter as he tucks the chain and ring back into his costume. I trust one don't need to tell you it's a secret? I won't tell. Midoriya promises brightly. Thank you for trusting me with something like this. Considering everything. I really appreciate it. You figured it out yourself, Shota shrugs easily. It would be illogical to deny it when you're right. I'm just glad you'll keep it to yourself. Information like that getting out is dangerous. The more the villains know, the more ammunition they have. He doesn't tell Midoriya that that's exactly how Deku's made a name for himself. He has a feeling the kid will just take the guilt of his alternate self's actions. He's already got enough on his plate at this point, no need to pile more on there. I understand. Midoriya gives a serious nod. I'm sorry I scared you with the analysis and the mumbling. Analysis has been my hobby since I was a kid. I didn't think I'd get a quirk for a long time, but I just thought they were so cool. Sometimes I just can't turn it off. It's creepy, I know. It's an occupation, Shota cuts him off with a sigh. He makes a mental note to bring this up later and dig deeper, but for now, he lets it go. I just wasn't expecting it. It's not creepy, kid. They're good skills to have, observational and analysis skills, useful for heroics, But you can't just analyze someone aloud. You don't know who could be listening. Midoriya looks thoughtfully surprised. Don't think it's creepy? Who the hell hurt this kid? Shota would just like to have a word. It's bullshit like that what makes people break. That forces people into positions that don't end well for anyone. There's not a doubt in Shota's mind that Deku had probably heard the same bullshit and snapped. Most aren't born villains, they turn to it. No, Shota frowns, trying not to be annoyed that that's what the kid chose to take from what he said. He really will have to revisit this, won't he? This is obviously what Midoriya needs to hear right now though, so he shoves down the annoyance and continues. There's nothing wrong with analyzing or observing, just, you have to do it safely. Be mindful. The boy stares, but doesn't say anything. Shota thinks he might have broken the kid. Shota blinks as the kid stares ahead of himself, lips moving like he's speaking, but no words come out. He decides to let the kid go off. If it'll keep him distracted, then power to him. If anyone needs a second to decompress, it's Midoriya. Shota lets his eyes fall shut as he leans back in his chair. He doesn't stir until the door opens again and Tsukachi and Nizu walk back in. Midoriya jerks to attention, swirling to look back at them like he'd forgotten they were here too. Everyone's alive, good. The rodent smiles as he settles back into his chair, Tsukachi retaking his own as well. Tsukachi and I spoke, and we've come to some decisions. Of course you have, Shota tried not to roll his eyes, slumping back. Let's hear it then. Though we don't know what this quirk Midoriya-kun was hit with truly is, nor who the quirks belongs to, we are running what we know through the Japan Quirk Registry database in hopes of getting some answers. For now, all we can do is wait, unfortunately. Shota gives his boss props for how he manages to sound sympathetic. Midoriya nods solemnly, like he'd assumed as much. Sorry, I don't remember more. Shota opens his mouth to put an end to that, but Tsukachi beats him to it. You've given us enough to run a fairly specific search, don't beat yourself up about it, okay? None of this is your fault. The kid bows his head in a tiny nod, but doesn't look convinced. Nizu gives an agreeing hum before continuing. Since we have no means to get Midoriya-kun home, we've decided that the safest place for him to stay, for the time being, is at Yui. It's best you're somewhere where we can monitor the quirk you're under and keep an eye on you if there are any effects we're unaware of. It also doesn't hurt to have an erasure quirk on hand. Aizawa-kun, you don't mind, no? No, Shota shrugs instantly. It makes sense that he'd stick with me. I am his homeroom teacher in his reality. Plus, we have the space in both the 1A dorms as well as my apartment upstairs, whichever you're more comfortable with. And, I'm sure you'd feel more comfortable being in a familiar setting, Midoriya? If it's not too much trouble, the teen mumbles, but Shota sees the relief in his eyes. I trust Aizawa-sensei. I'm glad. Shota can't quite contain the fondness swelling in his chest from the soft admission. I'd feel better having the kid close anyways. My students are afraid of Deku, though he hasn't attacked directly, he's been a part of attacks. They know what he does and they're rightfully scared. They'll be wary at best and hostile at worst. I don't want any harm to come to Midoriya because they get scared. I second that. Nizu nods seriously. I trust you to keep him safe, Aizawa-kun. He is a Yui guest, after all. 1A is a bright group, but they have personality. Please keep them in line. Midoriya snorts at that, before seeming to catch himself. He looks up at them quickly, eyes apologetic, but expression very much not, sorry. Shota almost forgot Midoriya knows most of his students. They're his classmates in his own reality. He's not sure if that'll make this harder or easier. There really isn't much we can do, Tsukachi offers the kid sympathetically. Quirks like this generally aren't permanent, but the duration is unknown. I've personally never heard of a quirk like this, but I can only hope the heroes in your reality are working to bring you back. I'm sorry, there's not much more we can do. You've done lots, Midoriya tells him with a thankful smile. To Shota's mortification, the kid stands and arches into a formal bow. I'm very grateful. Thank you, Paul. You're very welcome, Nizu grins. Now, if that's everything, it's been a long night and I'm sure both Aizawa-kun and Midoriya-kun could do with some rest. Of course, Tsukachi bows his head, I'll keep you up to date with what I find. Likewise, Nizu chirps, hopping down from his chair and heading towards the door without waiting for Midoriya or Shota to follow. Shota's not at all surprised to find an automated computer-operated car waiting, but Midoriya is. The kid frowns thoughtfully as Nizu hops into the passenger's seat, before following Shota and climbing into the back seat. The first little bit of the drive is quiet, and it's also not surprising that Nizu's the one to break the peacefulness. Just so we're clear, for the time being, I think it's best that we keep Yagi away from Midoriya-kun. Deku did a great deal of damage to All Might's career, and as such he harbors negative feelings. I would hope he wouldn't be unjust towards you for Deku's actions, but I can't be certain of it. I understand you're close with your reality's All Might, but that simply won't be the case here. Apologies. Midoriya looks saddened by this, but nods anyways. I understand. Nizu's smile softens in a way Shota doesn't remember ever seeing. I understand this is difficult, all things considered, and do trust that I've considered it all, but I wouldn't place the restriction if I wasn't positive it was necessary for your safety. Midoriya gives another nod, not saying anything. Satisfied with that, Nizu then turns to look back at Shota. Aizawa-kun, I'm not sure what you have planned regarding your roommate, but let me know if there are any accommodations to be made. Kid already knows about Hizashi. Shota waves dismissively, trying not to relish in the fact Nizu looks surprised. Talk about first. Figured it out himself. Apparently, Mike and I aren't as sneaky as we think we are in his reality. I can only hope the two of us are, but Midoriya has me doubting it. Oh, and now Nizu's snickering. Shota pretends he's not offended by the fact a 15-year-old figured him out, even if he really is. As it turns out, Midoriya's student ID card does work, it just isn't a programmed card for their specific security system, which causes the gate system overload and to show an error message. Nizu is completely fascinated as he overrides the system so Shota and Midoriya can enter, and even requests that Midoriya let him borrow the alternate reality ID card with the promise to return it promptly. Midoriya's brow furrows as he grants permission for Nizu to study it. Shota is just done by this point, setting a hand on the teen's shoulder and directing him towards the 1A dorms. Until you're introduced to my 1A and I can be certain none of them try to kill you, you're unfortunately stuck in the apartment. Though, you're more than welcome to take the guest room even when you're comfortable with the students. I don't mind where you choose. Okay, Midoriya yawns. Great. Shota nods as he unlocks the building doors and ushers the kid to the elevator. I'm tired too, so we'll rest up for now. I'll introduce you to the kids after school this evening, if you're alright with that, or we can wait a little. Whatever you're feeling up to. Aren't you supposed to be teaching now? Mix covering for me. Shota waves it off, rubbing at his eyes as they step out of the elevator. You can borrow some of my clothes for now to sleep in, and later I'll find you some clothes in your size. Probably UE uniforms, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Why you don't have to? You want to wear the bunny suit to bed? Be bunny, this is my hero costume. Shota pauses, glancing down at the kid's attire. He can kinda see it. Sorta. He won't pretend to understand the boy's costume. It probably looks better when it's not torn and dirty. Hopefully. What's with the bunny ears? They're not, the kid groans. I'd appreciate clothes to sleep in, sensei. Thank you. Shota shrugs, leading the kid into the apartment and down the hall to the bedrooms. He pushes open the guest room door and gestures the kid in. I'll be right back. He finds an old pair of sweat breathes that probably never fit him, as well as steals a new promotional shirt from a box that Hizashi ordered to advertise his radio show. He knows the blonde won't mind, and since Midoriya's a fan, he figures it's two birds with one stone. The kid is perched on the bed when Shota pauses in the doorway. My bedroom is down the hall, last door. Come find me if you need me. Help yourself in the kitchen, Mike will be back at the end of the school day. Please stay in the dorms, preferably the apartment. Bathrooms across the hall. Shota pauses, trying to think of anything else he needs to explain. He comes up short, running a hand through his hair as he tosses the clothes, which Midoriya is ill-prepared to catch, directly at the unsuspecting teen. He eyes the kid before humming out a simple demand of, sleep, and promptly shutting the door on the kid. God, he's tired. Tuesday, alternate reality. By some divine power's interference, Shota manages to get a solid 7 hours of sleep from the time he flops into bed to the time he stirs. He's slept for 7 hours, but it still doesn't feel like enough. It never feels like enough. It feels like he hit the pillow after changing out of his costume and he was out like a light, yet at the same time, it feels like he only fell asleep moments ago. He honestly would have slept longer too, if it weren't for movement in the corner of the room. Shota's always been a light sleeper, so he's quick to jolt up when something bumps against the closet door in the corner of the room, groggy mind making a feeble attempt for the capture weapon he'd deposited on the floor before flopping into bed. Comes a surprised yelp. Sheesh, Sho, it's just me. Tripped on your boot and bumped the door by accident. Sorry I startled you, I know you need the suit. Nizu said you were at the station working on a high-profile case when he asked Nem and I to take over your class. Hizashi. Of course it's just Hizashi. It's always Hizashi. Who else would it be sneaking around in their bedroom? Midoriya. It could have been Midoriya. He knows it's probably unlikely that the kid would have just come into the room. He seems polite enough, probably would have knocked and given Shota a second to orient himself. But still, it could have been an emergency or something. Shota draws in a shaky breath at the thought and silently thanks the universe that it was Hizashi and not the kid in the room. God, it would have scared the shit out of the teen if he'd been coming looking for Shota for something and Shota panicked in his groggy state and caught him in his capture weapon. And the upsetting part of that is, even after just meeting the kid, he knows Midoriya would probably apologize for disturbing him, even though Shota had explicitly told him he could. He knows the kid wouldn't be offended in the least if it did happen. Startled and scared, definitely, but Shota just has the worst feeling that the boy would find some way to defend him against his own actions. Shota would still feel like an a-hole though. It could have been traumatizing for the poor kid, so Shota can't help but being relieved it really was Hizashi. He wouldn't even feel bad if he accidentally tied up his husband. Far better than scaring the skittish doppelganger of Japan's current most feared villain. Shota reaches a hand up to rub at his tired eyes before letting his fingers raise higher to card through his own sleep-mussed hair. He groans into the room and really debates flopping back down and trying to fall back to sleep, but ends up kicking his legs over the edge of the bed instead. "It's okay. I'm sorry. What's got you so on edge?" Hizashi has turned towards him now, his brow furrowed in concern. Shota takes a second to clear his head, trying to wipe the sleep from his eyes once again. He digs the heel of his palm into his eye before dragging down to scratch idly at the scar from the eye subconsciously. He tries not to think about catching Deku's eyes just seconds before the teenager leaned over to Shigaraki, speaking calmly to the villain as he gestured to Shota uninterestedly. It was all in the blink of an eye, which was followed by Deku promptly disappearing through those quirk portals after sealing Shota's fate and giving Shigaraki an upper hand in the fight. Shota's not sure he'll ever forget the teen's crooked grin and the mock salute he'd thrown in Shota's direction before stepping through the portal and disappearing from sight as Shigaraki rushed him, prepared to take him out using whatever insight Deku had offered up. He takes a second to differentiate the teenage from the USJ and the one currently asleep in their guest room, as hard as it feels to do so. Viewing them as the same person will only hurt everyone in the long run, and honestly, Midoriya doesn't deserve it. He knows they're different people from different realities, but it's still so hard to look at Midoriya and not see Deku. Shota. Hizashi is now at his side, a hand on Shota's thigh, while his other lifts to swat at where Shota's still scratching the scar. Did something happen at the station? Nizu said it was high priority, but you only rub at your scar when you're thinking the USJ and Deku. No. Shota drops his hands to his lap as if he'd been scolded, the hand that had been pressing into his cheekbone settling over Hizashi's hand on his leg so he can curl his fingers into Hizashi's. Nothing happened. Nothing. Nothing bad, at least. But something did happen? Hizashi questions quietly, and all Shota can manage is a nod. Something did. He gets out in confirmation after a second, and I don't know how you're going to take it, but I need you to try and take it well. Hizashi opens his mouth to respond, but it snaps shut just as fast. He stares at Shota, brows furrowing as his lips curl downward in a small frown. Finally, Hizashi seems to find his voice again. What happened? Shota thinks about telling Hisashi now, just blurting it out without beating around the bush, but he doesn't know how his husband will react to that. It sounds crazy, honestly, and he sorta doesn't think Hisashi will even believe him unless there's some proof. Unless he sees it for himself. Hell, Shota probably wouldn't believe it either if he hadn't seen the ID card both at the station, as well as when Nizu had tried it on the gate where it had come so close to actually granting entrance, and heard the kid talking about his own reality that was different but just so similar at the same time. And if that didn't already seal the fact that this Midoriya Izuku was not their Deku, then watching how the kid broke down into not one, but two heartbreakingly distraught and lost panic attacks surely would. Villain or not, no one would be able to act such raw emotion. Shota knows he has to be careful with this. Though Hisashi hasn't come face to face with Deku, the teen had been long gone when All Might and the teachers finally made it to the USJ that day. He'd seen the aftermath of it. Had sat at Shota's bedside after he'd been left within an inch of his life. All Might isn't the only one who harbors negative feelings for the kid. Shota stands, stretching out his back before holding a hand out for Hisashi to take. The blonde eyes it suspiciously before taking Shota's hand and letting the dark-haired hero tug him up. Shota sees the confusion in his eyes, but he's glad Hisashi trusts him enough not to say anything just yet. Shota leads the blonde down the hallway before pausing outside the guest room. Hisashi just looks confused as they pause outside the door as Shota's second hand settles on the doorknob. It's no surprise that Hisashi doesn't have a clue that there's someone else in the apartment. It's not like they have many guests, and with the door usually always shut, no one would even think to go in unless they specifically needed something, and there's no way Hisashi would need anything from the room considering the only things in there are the furnishing Nizu had put in when Heights Alliance came to be. Shota drops Hisashi's hand, lifting a finger to his lips in a silent, shh gesture that Hisashi absolutely hates. The blonde bristles in annoyance, and Shota sees him gearing up to vocalize his annoyance in the way he usually does, but the voice hero seems to decide to heed the warning instead. Though, in usual Hisashi flair, he does blow out an annoyed huff as he crosses his arms over his chest. Curiosity outweighs the annoyance easily though when Shota finally turns the handle and eases the door open. The blonde's eyebrows furrow as he leans into the room, before they shoot up in surprise when he spots what's out of place. The room is silent besides the small, evened-out breaths of the sleeping teenager. Shota peeks in enough to see the blankets on the bed rising and falling in pattern with the slow breaths. You can't really see Midoriya besides the tufts of green curls barely seen at the head of the bed. Shota's glad to see the kid's supposed hero costume folded as neatly as the torn fabric can be, settled on the desktop in the corner of the room. He'd half expected to see the clothes Shota had given him there instead, but it's both heartwarming and genuinely terrifying how much the teen trusts him. Shota. Shota glances to where Hisashi is still taking in the kid, who is Midoriya Izuku. Shota whispers back bluntly, preparing for the worst. He winces as Hisashi W's around to face him, face dropping first into shock, then momentary fear before settling on fury. The blonde W's back to face the sleeping teenager, lips pressed in a scowl. He'd known that Hisashi would piece the civilian name to the villain name just as fast as Shota had. Dek. Shota's quick to slap a hand over Hisashi's mouth before he can get the name out, his own quirk glaring into at his husband. He chances a glance to where Midoriya has stirred faintly at the noise, but not woken up. His breathing is still slow and deep, so Shota's fairly sure he's still in a deep sleep. He'd hoped that seeing the kid asleep, innocent and not trying to kill them, might have eased the news, but that was clearly a miscalculation. Hisashi is glaring back at him just as fiercely to the point Shota thinks Hisashi might actually bite him, except he's also looking at Shota like he's lost his mind. Shota blinks, letting his own quirk fall, but he doesn't release his hand from the blonde's mouth. Shut up, Shota snarls quietly before leveling his voice. There is an explanation if you'll let me talk. This is not what it looks like, Hisashi. Think rationally. I will explain everything, just not right here. He's had a sheet time and if you think I needed the sleep, the kid definitely needs it. He doesn't pull his hand away until Hisashi gives a slow nod, though his eyes are still hard and he's watching Shota like he's insane. Maybe he's, who knows? Hisashi licks at Shota's palm, and the black-haired man scowls at the childish action as he rips his hand away from Hisashi's face. He wipes his hand dry on Hisashi's shirt, shooting him with an unamused glare, unsurprised to find Hisashi's bright eyes glaring right back. Hisashi doesn't back down, that bright, challenging fury that Shota very rarely sees alit in his gaze. Though Hisashi is clearly said, he does keep his voice at a whisper as he hisses out his question through clenched teeth. Why the hell is there a villain in our guest room, Shota? There's not, Shota refutes. Please, Hisashi. You know I wouldn't do anything stupid. This feels pretty stupid, Shota. Without good reason. I'll remind you again, this is not what it looks like. It looks like there is a villain on our school campus. There's a villain in our home, Shota. Are you seriously going to tell me that's not what this is? Deku is in our home. Do you have any idea how dangerous this is? What the hell are you even thinking? I know you've done some questionable things, Shota, but that kid tried to kill you. He tried to kill our students. He's a villain. That's not Deku, Hisashi, Shota whispers, and he frowns as Hisashi rears back. What the hell does that even mean? Look, Shota rubs at his eyes. Let me explain before you come to your own conclusion without hearing all the information. Don't just condemn the kid without having all the facts. Now, let's go to the kitchen. I'll make you some tea and we'll talk. I seriously don't want to wake the kid up. He's had a very rough night. But he's not who we know, Hisashi. Trust me. Hisashi's shoulders square up like he's going to keep fighting, but all at once he wilts. The blonde frowns thoughtfully as he studies Shota's face intently. The dark-haired man doesn't know what his husband spots in his expression, but whatever it is has some of the fight draining from Hisashi's tense body. Hisashi huffs a breath as he looks away in what Shota can only call defeat. The nod he gets in response is tiny, but honestly more than Shota was expecting. Shota gives a nod of his own as he checks one last time to make sure the boy is still out before finally easing the door shut. He turns to head down the hall, but before he gets very far, Hisashi catches him by the arm. Listen to me though, if that kid tries anything, I'm going to burst his eardrums. I'm not kidding, Shota. I don't trust him. He won't, Shota assures softly. Just let me explain. Hisashi gives a stiff nod as he lets his hand fall from Shota's arm. The blonde glances back at the guest door before following Shota out to the main living space. Hisashi sits at the table in the kitchen while Shota busies himself making tea. The blonde is oddly silent, thoughtful as he watches Shota grab the mugs, tea bags, and start the kettle. Every so often, Shota will see his husband glance down the hall like he's ready for Midoriya to spring out from the shadows and kill them both. Shota chooses to ignore it for now. Hisashi's wariness is good. Until he's gotten an explanation, he should be cautious. Shota can't fault Hisashi for being cautious when he doesn't have all information. As far as Hisashi is concerned right now, there's only one reality, and that kid asleep in the guest room is the same person who'd attacked them countless times. It would be illogical to not offer his husband some leeway until he's been made aware of the situation. Though if it continues like this after Hisashi's been informed of Midoriya's situation, Shota will put a stop to it. Midoriya is not a criminal, and he'll be dead if anyone makes him feel like he is one any more than they already had at the station before figuring this whole mess out. Shota can only imagine the damage that did to an innocent heroic student seeking help in, what he assumed, was his own reality, searching out people you expect to be on your side and instead getting arrested for crimes you didn't commit. That's beyond fed up, even if no one knew at the time. Everyone was in the same confusion boat. As is, he's already sure the kid will be returning to his reality with the trauma from those mistakes. It doesn't take long for Shota to prepare 2 mugs of tea to their liking. He grabs both and sets them on the table before plopping down in the seat across from Hisashi. The blonde is too busy watching the hallway to really notice, so Shota toes at Hisashi's leg to get his attention. He's not going to do anything. Shota frowns as Hisashi's attention slowly crawls back to him, a light frown on the blonde's own face. Hisashi squints at him before turning fully toward Shota as he wraps his hands around his mug. You say that, but I can't really believe you. He's a criminal. The kid's asleep. I wouldn't be surprised if he slept a good 10 more hours. Shota deadpans as he lifts his mug to his lips. And that kid is anything but a criminal. Seriously, if I had any doubts about his character, he wouldn't be here, Hisashi. I wouldn't put you or my students in harm's way, and you should know that. I do know that. Hisashi's face puckers up at Shota's words. The blonde drags his hands down his face as he slumps back in his chair. I have the utmost faith in you, and you know that, but that's Deku in there. Shota, this is insane, surely you know that? I know it's insane, Shota sighs, leaning back in his own chair. I know. Trust me, I know it's insane, but you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg here, Zashi. Okay, Hisashi huffs. Okay, well, explain this to me then, Sho. And he does. He tells his husband how he'd found Midoriya. Or, better yet, how Midoriya found him. He tells him of arresting the kid on the spot, disregarding everything he was saying because it really did sound insane. He tells Hisashi of the station, and Tsukachi and Nizu, and that impossible ID card. He leaves out some of the finer details for now, like the panic attacks. Shota refuses to use the kid's emotional distress as any sort of convincing point, even talking to his husband. He tells Hisashi of their alternate selves that apparently exist in a reality far from theirs but not all that different. He insists that Midoriya really is a 1A student, even as Hisashi's face pinches in disbelief. Shota wishes that he'd thought to keep Midoriya's ID card as proof, but Hisashi will end up seeing it at some point or another, he's sure. He tells his husband how the kid had known things Deku could never. Specific things that you could only know if you really were a part of it. He doesn't go into too much detail on that, not wanting to freak Hisashi out before he even actually meets the kid, but he expresses how spot-on Midoriya had been. Hisashi listens dutifully, cradling his tea in his hands, but not drinking it. His eyebrows are furrowed as Shota speaks, and he's really listening, probably picking Shota's words apart as they go. Hisashi is actually a very intelligent person under all the leather and boisterous personality. He'd been top of their class in school and he's fluent in 3 languages, not to mention is capable of holding a conversation in a couple more, which in and of itself is remarkable. People don't give him enough credit. That's insane, Hisashi offers when Shota's finally finished. He doesn't look as wary, but he still doesn't look completely convinced either. It's an eccentric story, even if it is the honest truth. I don't even know how to really respond to this, Sho. Yeah, Shota agrees tiredly. He sips at cold tea. I know it sounds crazy, Zashi, but it's the truth. Deku would never be able to con his way through both Tsukachi and Nizu. And I saw what that ID card did to the gate with my own eyes. That kid isn't from here. I know you've never met Deku, but the kid in our guest room is not him. Hisashi is quiet for a long second, staring off into space instead of focusing on anything around them. Shota lets him wade through the information, finishing off his tea as he does so. Alternate realties though. Shota looks towards his husband when Hisashi breaks the silence they'd settled into. I do believe you, it's insane, Shota offers drily. They're using the word so much it's starting to not sound like a real word anymore, but it's still the only word that gives the situation any justice. Yeah, Hisashi snorts. Definitely insane. Hisashi pauses before finally sipping at his own cold tea. It's just hard to wrap my head around the fact that kid, our Deku's reality double, is a heroic student. He's a student at this very school in another universe somewhere. He's a kid in your class where he's from. Deku attacked this school. He attacked you. They're not the same person, Shota shakes his head. I mean, they are in a sense, but they're different. He's a nice kid, I haven't really figured him out yet, but from what I can see he'd be a good student to have. I know. Hisashi reaches up to card his fingers through gelled hair. It's at the point now where the gel is starting to lose its stiffness and strands are falling out of the updo and wilting. He's in desperate need of a shower. I get that. It's Deku. How am I supposed to look at the kid and not see the villain who helped Shigaraki pulverize your head, you dig? Just meet the kid before you blacklist him, alright? Shota rubs at his forehead with the knuckle of his thumb. He's got high expectations for us and he'd be devastated if any of us boycotted him for things he literally didn't even exist in our world for. Deku's actions are not Midoriya's. I hear ya, Hisashi snorts. I'll give the kid a chance. But just know my threat still stands. One wrong move and his ears'll be bleedin', oh. Rein it in, will ya? Shota sighs. He'd probably cry if he heard you say that. Wouldn't shut up about you. How good of a teacher you are, your radio show, even your hero career. It was almost cute, he got all starry-eyed and everything. He feels a little bad throwing Midoriya under the bus, and maybe a bit bad for digging into Hisashi's weakness of hurting his listeners' feelings, but it's worth it when Hisashi turns to him in surprise, head-ped like a big, dumb golden retriever. Really? Is it wrong of him to butter his husband up in hopes of easing the actual introduction between them later? Probably. Does he care? Not in the slightest. Whatever gets the job done. Besides, it's all true. It's not like he's putting words into Midoriya's mouth. The kid had literally launched into a full-blown worship rant about Hisashi. Plus, he knows it'll all go smoother if Hisashi already has a sense of Midoriya's character. And hero worship is about as far as Shota's figured out at this point. He has only known the kid for a couple hours. Oh yeah, Shota manages a tiny smile. His realities, you made quite the impression on him. It'll probably crush the poor kid if you threatened him. You're playing dirty now, Hisashi whines, glaring half-heartedly at Shota. The dark-haired man shrugs indifferently. No point defending himself when that's exactly what he's doing. They both know it, so it would be illogical to try. And Hisashi is one of the few people who'll actually call him on his bullshit. Hisashi pouts. Just for that, you're on dishes duty while I go shower. And then you get to go pop in and show your kids that you're alive. They were worried about your absence since you've never missed a day, not even after getting your face smushed into the ground. I tried to tell them you were just caught up at the station, but then Kaminari convinced everyone that the only reason you were at the station and not at school was because you probably got arrested and couldn't leave, so have fun with that one. And you didn't tell them I was working on something? Shota frowns as Hisashi drains what's left in his mug and slides it towards Shota's own. They clink together softly, drawing Shota's eyes down. The dark-haired man raises his gaze from the mugs again as Hisashi stands. I'm literally a pro-hero, what the hell would I be arrested for? No idea, babe, I'm just the messenger, Hisashi grins. He rounds the table and presses a quick kiss to Shota's head. I'll be on my best behavior and shoot you a text if the little listener wakes up. I doubt he will, Shota sighs, dragging his palms down his face. I wasn't kidding, he's had a rough time. For his sake I hope he sleeps for a while. I can only assume reality jumping can have some negative effects on the body, I just hopes he sleeps them off. Reality jet lag, Hisashi nods solemnly. Shota snorts in surprise, shaking his head at Hisashi's antics. Go shower. The man huffs, grabbing both mugs with one hand and shooing Hisashi away with the other. I'll wash these up, and then I'll head down to check up on my gremlins. I guess I have to assure them I wasn't incarcerated because my lovely husband didn't think to plead my case. Shota turns to the sink as a cackling Hisashi disappears down the hallway. It's a few more hours until they see Midoriya. Shota's returned from being the responsible guardian he's supposed to be, completely drained and wishing he'd chosen literally any other occupation than teaching. He leaves the dorm common area with a headache and a newfound respect for these children's parents. How they've dealt with them for over 15 years is a mystery to him, in the nicest way possible. Why did he ever agree to being a temporary guardian for 19 heroic brats? He's not surprised to hear Midoriya hasn't stirred at all after his hour with his students, even when Hisashi had poked his head into the room to check on him. The kid really was down for the count. The two of them had had a nice quiet dinner of curry, making sure to set some aside for Midoriya for when he woke up. He'd probably be hungry. He hasn't eaten since before Shota arrested him at least, and that was well over 12 hours ago by this point. They're at the table marking when Shota first hears movement down the hall, followed by the door easing open softly. That's when Hisashi startles from his English assignments. Hisashi's attention WHPS towards the hallway opening, leering to the side as if he could spot the teenager from his position. He can't. The two of them share a glance, but neither moves. Shota doesn't want to crowd the kid, and Hisashi still holds that inkling of fear that Midoriya is actually Deku. The bathroom door shuts, and Shota leans back in his chair. Hisashi has forced his attention back onto the assignments in front of him, but he's no longer marking despite the narrowed eyes on the neat printing of Yayarosa's essay. He's waiting. Midoriya is in the bathroom for a good 10 minutes. Enough time that Shota's about to get up and check on him, but then the toilet flushes and the sink runs, and not long after that, the bathroom door squeaks open. Hisashi exiges in a breath as soft footsteps pad closer, but Shota just turns in his chair prepared to greet the kid and get the introductions out of the way. He pauses before he can even open his mouth though. The kid looks, well bet. He's pale-faced but flushed bright red in the cheeks. He squints like the world around him in a raging sun, and Shota can see flecks of pain in the kid's eyes. He subtly holds his stomach and wobbles faintly as he steps. It's overall concerning. The t-shirt lets Shota actually see the extent of the kid's arms as well, and it's not a pretty sight. He'd thought the swollen wrists and hand scars were bad, but seeing the old scars and injuries that climb up the kid's arms is horrifying. What the hell does that destructive quirk even do to the poor kid? How has anyone let this continue? Out of the corner of his eye, Shota sees Hisashi bristle too as his careful eyes settle on some of the worst scars visible. The blonde shoots him a look of concern that Shota can only reply to with a half-hearted shrug, and then Hisashi's gaze is back on the teen, bottom lip drawn and being worried between his teeth. Still, the voice hero doesn't draw any attention to himself, and the teenager doesn't notice him. Shota frowns as he turns fully towards the kid. Problem child? The kid jumps, and if that's not a testament to his current state, Shota doesn't know what it. The kid had been looking at them, hazy eyes on them, but almost unseeing. Like he didn't process them as actual people in the room with him. Sensei, Midoriya whispers, and there's a faint slur to his voice. Shota's frown deepens as he takes the kid in entirely. You okay? The kid's dirty curls fall into his eyes as he bobs his head in a slow nod. He squeezes his eyes shut for a moment as he wavers in place. It's quite the feat, almost falling over while stood in place. Shota's about to get up and steady the kid when the teen slowly turns and pads softly towards the table, zeroing in on the last remaining chair. Hisashi nudges the third chair at their table out with his foot, and Shota shoots him a thankful glance as the kid almost topples down into it. "I'm okay." The boy eases down into the chair, lifting his hands to dig the ball of his palms into his eyes. Bright. "Sorry. You don't look very okay, problem child." Shota's brow furrows. "We should probably take you down to see the nurse." "I don't want to bother recovery girl with this." Midoriya gives a faint shake of his head that sets off a recoiling wince. Shota has to remind himself that Midoriya is a student at this school where he's from, but Hisashi jumps in concealed surprise at the mention of their nurse. "She's busy. Besides, I think it's just my body realizing it's not in the right place, you know? I was fine when I fell asleep." "So it's an effect of the quirk?" The kid gives a thoughtless shrug before he shifts so he can cross his arms on the tabletop and settle his chin on his forearms. "It's not that bad. I've had worse. At least nothing's broken, right? And isn't that worrying?" Another red flag. Shota knows he'll never be able to leave well enough alone. If it is a side effect of the quirk, Shota starts slowly, shifting in his chair so he's angled towards the child, even if Midoriya is tucking himself into a contorted pretzel sort of shape and doesn't notice in the slightest. "We should probably monitor it." "What are your symptoms?" "A migraine," the kid offers softly without opening his eyes. "Well, I think. I don't know, I've never had a headache like this. It's either that, or my head's imploding. I really hope it's not though. But besides that, kinda nauseous? My eyes hurt when I open them. And everything is just so bright. Sir, like my arms hurt earlier but everything hurts now." Shota narrows his eyes as he turns the symptoms over in his head. "You were throwing up in the bathroom just now, weren't you?" Shota's not sure how the kid's exhausted face manages to convey guilt in his state, but it does. And honestly, it's all the answer he needs. He says in a breath and frowns deeply. "Problem child?" "Definitely. I thought I told you to come to me if you needed me?" Shota leans back in his chair, arms crossing over his chest as he eyes the kid. Midoriya's forehead is cushioned on his forearms now, face hiding in the pit he'd created between his arms in an attempt to block out the light. "Thought you'd be busy," Midoriya croaks out. "Sorry. I tried to sleep it off after I woke up, But then I felt very sick and I didn't want to make a mess in your home. Sorry. Plus, I don't think there's much you could have done to help, Sensei. You know, we wouldn't have been mad if you did make a mess. Hisashi finally speaks. Midoriya jolts up like he hadn't realized Hisashi was even here, head jerking up so fast Shota thinks he's given himself whiplash. That's definitely not something you can help and it's not your fault, kiddo, don't apologize for it. And especially don't apologize for something that didn't even happen, Shota tacks on Drilly. Shota feels like his words go straight over the kid's head, since Midoriya is now staring wide-eyed at Hisashi. Hisashi looks startled at suddenly having the kid's full attention. His husband shifts uncertainly, eyes darting between Shota and the teenager cautiously. Shota fears for a second he'll have to intervene, until the kid brightens considerably. Present Mike-sensei. Hisashi's eyes widen in surprise, even though Shota had briefed him on this. He'd prepared his husband as much as he could, but no amount of warning and preparing could really make you ready for a Deku look and sound alike to beam up at you in unadulterated awe. Shota had warned Hisashi that Midoriya wasn't like Deku. It hits Shota like a bus that Hisashi looks so shell-shocked because this child recognized him so easily out of costume. It doesn't happen often. Hisashi looks different out of costume and with his hair down. It's part of the reason why he decided on such an out-there hero costume and to embrace his adoration of leather. People don't tend to realize they're one in the same, because unlike most heroes, Hisashi has created a whole hero persona out of the more chipper and eccentric aspects of his own personality. It's probably terrifying that a Deku double had figured him out so easily. He's a bit surprised too, if he's honest, but he knows more about Midoriya than Hisashi does. And Midoriya had known he and Hisashi were married, so as far as they know, Midoriya could have just pieced it together with what he already knows. Plus, who else would be in Shota's apartment with him after hours? That's the thing though. Midoriya knows things, sees things. He really does have a knack for analysis and observation that very well could make him a threat. It did make Deku a threat after all. So, as surprising as it is that the kid knows him out of costume, it's also really not. Shota realizes a second too late that he and Hisashi have been quiet too long. Midoriya breaks the silence, smile waning as he tugs at his own fingers nervously. I'm very sorry to intrude in your home without your permission, sensei. Aizawa-sensei said it was all right, but it's really not fair for you to be scared in your own home because of me. I know it's probably difficult considering everything that what he's done. What Deku's done. I understand if you're not comfortable with me, staying here. Hisashi blinks as he absorbs the information before looking quickly towards Shota like the apology and empathy towards Hisashi's situation is some sort of riddle with a hidden meaning. All the dark-haired man can offer in reply is a shrug, because he also doesn't know what to make of the doppelganger. The two may look and sound the same, maybe even think partially the same too, but Deku and Midoriya really are very different. Shota just needed Hisashi to see that for himself. It's fine, listener. Hisashi grins as he finally lets his attention settle back on the slowly wilting teenager. The bout of energy had passed, leaving Midoriya reeling from the excitement in his unwell state. Shota doesn't even know where the kid pulled the energy from anyways. He looks like he's going to keel over any second. Hisashi seems to notice the subtle shift too, because his voice lowers but keeps that bright edge when he continues, I don't mind you hanging here with us for a while. Yo, it'll take some getting used to, sure, but I trust Eraserhead and he trusts you. I'm sure we'll be buddies in no time, yeah? You trust me? Midoriya squeaks as he turns to glance at Shota with a similar awe in his eyes. Have you given me a reason not to? Shota counters, ping an eyebrow. Hisashi reaches over the table to pat Midoriya's shoulder, and it's just such a trusting action that Shota thinks he falls even more in love with his husband in that moment. Hisashi is still scared, he can see it in his eyes, but he's extending that arm to the kid because Shota's vouching for him. If Eraser didn't trust you, you wouldn't be here, kiddo. Everything's cool, you dig? Midoriya looks back at Hisashi as he pulls away before glancing at Shota once again. The teen's expression softens and he manages a light nod as a tiny smile lifts onto his lips. Thank you. F for your hospitality and And for trusting me. Shota flaps a dismissive hand, as Hizashi grins to the point Shota hopes he doesn't start cooing at the poor kid. He should have known Hizashi would be completely and utterly weak against Midoriya's charm. The soft, usually unwarranted apologies, and the thoughtfulness and the genuine kindness that no one in their right mind would associate with Deku. So, Shota reins in the conversation before Midoriya can apologize for anything else. We ate while you were asleep, but something in the way you're wincing at the mention of food right now tells me you probably aren't interested in eating. The kid's nose wrinkles in addition to the wince, and he gives a nervous shrug. I don't think I could keep it down, sensei. I don't even have anything in me and I still feel really… The kid swallows thickly. Sick? Do you think you could stomach some tea then? The students have a really nice ginger tea in the kitchen downstairs. That might help settle your stomach. Hizashi asks patiently, or even just some water. You should drink something if you're not going to eat. We'll have to bring you to Recovery Girl if you get dehydrated, then we'd all get scolded. Midoriya rubs at his forehead, and Shota wonders what kind of pain tolerance the kid has. And maybe some ginger tea? I don't want to be a bother, I can just go back to sleep. I probably just need to orient myself. Hopefully. Hizashi's right, Shota frowns, you should drink something. And we talked about this. Just because you're in pain, doesn't mean you need to suffer with it. We have Advil for a reason, and I know for a fact a hot shower is known to help with a migraine. You do need to sleep it off, but you don't need to do so without help. The kid stares at him with squinted eyes, before he deflates into his chair. The teen is this in a breath. Showers help? They do, Shota nods. Heating and cooling packs will too, but I thought you might like to clean up as well. You look like you've been on patrol. I was on patrol, the teenager snorts as he drags a hand through his dirty green hair. I didn't realize I was so dirty. I think I got thrown into a wall, and I did wake up on the street. Sorry about your sheets in the guest room. I probably should have showered first. Shota swallows down an exasperated sigh. I wasn't worried about the sheets, problem child. It was just a fact. I thought you might want a shower, but you don't have to take one. Oh, Midoriya blinks. If you apologize again, I will make you run laps when you're feeling better. The teenager's jaw clicks shut, face contorting into a grimace as it vibrates his head. He reaches up to rub at his temples. I would like a shower. If you don't mind. Perfect. Hizashi stands with a casual smile. Listener, I'll show you where everything is in the bathroom and how to work the shower. It can be a bit tricky, yo. And while we do that, Shota here will run downstairs to get you some ginger tea from his kiddos. Don't you worry, they love to share. Why do I have to run downstairs? Shota drawls as he watches Hizashi usher the lagging teenager up to his still unbalanced feet. His hands hover like he's prepared to catch him if he tips, but Midoriya keeps himself upright. The kid's got a will of steel. They're your students, Hizashi snorts fondly. It'll be weirder for me to do it, and they'd probably think I was an intruder or something since I'm out of costume. Come on, Shota. Do it for the kiddo. Look at this little face. Oh, you don't have to? I'll get the tea. Shota huffs before the kid can finish, already standing and heading towards the door. I really don't mind, Midoriya. I was just teasing Hizashi for being demanding. He has a tendency. You love it, Hizashi scoffs dramatically as he leads the kid away. While you're down there, steal some of that delicious peach matcha Yorozu has for me. She keeps giving me cups before class and now I'm addicted. It's the bomb, you dig? Shota lets out an unimpressed hum, but despite the tone, both he and Hizashi know he'll do as requested. He always does when it's Hizashi asking. And he knows Yayorozu adores when people enjoy her teas. It's the only reason he's entertaining Hizashi's demand. She'll probably be ecstatic to see Shota finally trying it since she's offered it dozens of times and he always declines. Aha! Shota returns after being caught by Ida and Yayorozu in the kitchen. His students greet him pleasantly, if not a bit surprised by his presence, as they ask if there's anything they can help him with. It's expected of the Scion children. The two are planning a study group for the rest of the students to participate in if they choose to, since there are a couple big tests on the horizon. Shota gives a pleased hum as they inform him, Before he rounds the table and beelines for the cupboard the kids dedicated strictly to Yayarozu's doing, he's sure. Yayarozu, as expected, brightens when Shota asks if he can have some of her teas, and he feels better when he walks away knowing he'd asked instead of just taken, even if he's sure a couple tea bags missing wouldn't have even been noticed. When he finally makes his way back upstairs, Hizashi is parked right back at the table, the end of his glittery red marking pen settled between his lips as he reads English essays. Hizashi glances up out of habit and grins widely when he sees the packages of not just peach matcha tea powder, but raspberry and vanilla as well. He'd asked for the peach, and had the other two selections shoved into his hands before he could decline. They're all high-grade ceremony quality teas, and Shota doesn't doubt they probably cost a pretty penny. He might have to try a sip of Hizashi's teas just to see what money tastes like. Midoriya is still gone, but Shota doesn't hear the shower running. He shoots Hizashi a look of confusion, to which his husband smiles bashfully. Hizashi had somehow managed to convince Midoriya to have a hot bath instead of a shower, which is probably for the best considering his balance isn't quite up to par and they'd have more problems if the steam made the kid lightheaded while he was standing. Last thing they need is for Midoriya to pass out. A concussion on top of everything else would just be the icing on top of the cake, wouldn't it? While the kid is in the bath, Shota gets to work preparing everything for the teas. He refills the kettle and grabs 2 mugs, the 2 they'd used earlier. He readies everything, stopping just shy of turning the kettle on. It'll only take a couple minutes to boil when the kid's out of the bath. Midoriya isn't in the bath long. Soon he's emerging from the bathroom with a fresh, fruity scent of Hizashi's shampoo clinging after him. The tension in his body has eased a bit, but he still looks unwell. Pale and flushed, but now also looking exhausted. He'd put back on the clothes he'd been wearing, and he even goes as far as to thank Hizashi excessively for the limited edition radio merch. "I've never seen these, Mike-sensei. I wonder if my present Mike is coming out with a line like this. Thank you very much for letting me borrow it. It's so cool." Hizashi shoots Shota a hidden dirty look when he finally spots the brand new merch that won't even be released for a couple months on the kid. Shota snickers behind his hand as he waits for the kettle to boil. The kid drinks the tea slowly, watching through squinted eyes as Hizashi marks the essays between sips of his own matcha tea. Shota has reclaimed his own seat, and is more or less just studying Midoriya, not that the kid notices. The teenager manages to keep the tea down, even if there's a few points where he recoils away from it like the scent makes him feel sick. He still doesn't bother to try eating any real food, even when Shota offers something easy to keep down like toast or soda crackers. Shota doesn't mind too much. He's really just glad Midoriya managed to get something down. He'll just make sure the kid eats something for breakfast tomorrow. By the time Midoriya's finished his tea, he's pitching tiredly towards the table. They send the poor kid off to bed with a gel cooling pack for the migraine, a dose of Advil and a glass of water for if he wakes up thirsty in the night. The kid disappears after bowing, thankfully mortifying yet again, and he's down for the count once again when Shota checks on him half an hour later. "He's definitely not what I was expecting," Hizashi hums when Shota returns from checking on the kid. Shota can't help the snort of laughter as he flops back into his chair, helping Hizashi pile up the essays. He can already see some not great marks, so some of the kids will definitely benefit from the study group. I told you so. Wednesday, alternate reality. For the first time in a long time, Shota actually goes to bed with his husband and wakes up beside him in the morning. And not only that, but Hizashi is the one who needs to get up first and not him. He'd gotten into contact with his agency after Midoriya was good and asleep, and with Nizu's interference, had been given some paid leave to work on the confidential case that Nizu had insisted was priority. Though he's not usually one for skipping patrol, Shota can't argue that it's not a weight off his shoulder to not have to leave the heroic student doppelganger of a villain alone in a hero school. He wants to keep an eye on not just Midoriya, but anyone who interacts with him too. Shota knows there will be some mixed feelings about his presence here, and he hates the thought of Midoriya taking the brunt of everyone's dislike for Deku. Hizashi, though, unfortunately, still has his early morning patrol, so he rolls out of bed after pressing a sleepy kiss to Shota's cheek and gets himself ready for his busy day of patrol and teaching. The kid is awake when Shota finally stumbles out of his room. "You're up early," he comments as he beelines for the coffee pot, pouring a cup and drinking it black. He savors the burn and bitter taste as he stares at the coffee pot for a second before turning to Midoriya and eyeing him carefully. "How are you feeling this morning?" "Much better," the child chirps. "My head still hurts a bit, but besides that I'm good. And I'm always up this early. I usually go for my morning run around this time, but I wasn't sure if I was allowed to go without you, so I did some sit-ups and lunges instead. All Might and I made a workout schedule that I try to follow every day." Of course, he's one of those early morning exercise enthusiasts. Shota really doesn't know what he was expecting, but it should have been this. "Of course you do." Shota takes another gulp of his coffee as he tries to organize his thoughts. "You were right. For now, it would be better if you stuck close for a while, especially until you meet the students and we can gauge their reception of you. But besides that, Nizu will explain the guidelines he's put in place for you today when we go see him before classes this morning." "That's the only rule you have?" Midoriya pps his head. "Well," Shota squints thoughtfully at the kid, "you're my student in your reality, so I'll assume the rules I've placed here match up decently to the ones you know. We could go over them, but I feel it would be a waste of time. You're a smart kid, just use your common sense, okay?" "Of course, sensei." Midoriya grins. Shota hides a smile behind the rim of his mug as the teen's eyes light up along with the grin. "You don't have to worry about me." He wants to tell Midoriya it's not exactly him he's worried about, it's him he's worried for. Shota doesn't think the gravity of this has really hit Midoriya yet. Those he's met in this reality thus far have believed him after some convincing. Not everyone will, and that's dangerous. Deku is terrifying. He's a villain, and Midoriya is unlucky enough to be him, just on a different path of life. "Well," Shota sighs, dragging his fingers through his hair. He snags a knot from sleeping and works it out with his fingers. "I'm going to go get dressed and then we'll go find you a uniform in roughly your size. There's bound to be one somewhere in storage. I'm sure Nizu's already working on getting you a fitted one, but you can't make a very good impression in pajamas." The kid hesitates before nodding slowly. "Good." Shota finishes off his coffee, knowing damn well he'll be getting another cup in the teacher's office before classes start. "Why don't you eat the curry we put aside for you last night, if you think you can stomach it, and take some more Advil before we leave to keep the remnants of that migraine under control?" "Yes, sensei." Midoriya nods dutifully. By the time he's dressed in his hero costume, sleeping bag tucked under his arm, Midoriya is just finishing up the curry. It's not hard to sneak out of Heights Alliance without being seen by the students. There's a back door that Shota and Hizashi use when they don't want to risk disturbing the students, and it makes for the perfect escape. It's still early enough that very few students are even in the school. Since they switch to dorm life, they don't have students arriving hours before school starts due to transportation issues. Midoriya sticks to Shota's side, but he looks to be taking everything in, probably trying to spot differences between his Yui and theirs. Shota would be lying if he said he wasn't interested in that as well. When they get to the supply closet, Shota digs through boxes as he tries to find a regular uniform in the kid's general size, as well as a training uniform. He's not quite sure if he'll let Midoriya participate in anything yet, but better safe than sorry. The kid looks relieved when he has a uniform in his hands, and it's not something Shota can say he's seen when handing a kid a uniform that will essentially be a second skin to them. Their next stop is the washrooms so Midoriya can change into his uniform. Shota feels a little better when the kid blends in with the rest of the students, but he's still got a bad feeling about how this will play out. It's hard not to have a bad feeling when he knows exactly how he, Nizu, Tsukachi and Hizashi had all reacted to the kid's presence. They arrive at Nizu's office next, and Shota frowns as he knocks on the door. As expected, Nizu's chipper voice invites them in almost instantly. "Ready?" Shota pps his head in the kid's direction. Midoriya fiddles with his fingers and seks in a breath nervously. "I know I saw Nizu-sensei yesterday, but it sort of feels like I'm in trouble now, which is stupid because yesterday I was in HNDCFFS. I don't know, there's just something about going to the principal's office that makes me nervous." "Welcome to my world," Shota snorts drily. He doesn't wait for Midoriya's response, just pushes the door open and sets a hand on the kid's shoulder so he can guide him into the office. "Welcome." Nizu chirps from behind the desk with a clap of his paws. It's very nice to see you again, Midoriya-kun, and I'm quite glad it's under better circumstances than yesterday morning. Good morning, Nizu-sensei. The teenager ducks his head, almost shuffling closer to Shota. The man tucks his own face into his capture weapon as he leads them both to the two waiting chairs across from Nizu. Midoriya seems to be more skittish of Nizu than he is of Shota, and it makes sense when Shota thinks back to some of the things Nizu had said yesterday before they realized who Midoriya wasn't. He'd threatened an innocent kid with the most secure prison in all of Japan. Honestly, how can Midoriya even look at them, let alone trust them after that? I trust you're feeling better this morning? Nizu smiles at Midoriya, angling his head towards the teen. Aizawa-kun mentioned you were quite unwell yesterday evening. I can't imagine reality hopping would be very kind to one's body, but I'm sorry to hear you had such a poor time. I feel a lot better, Midoriya assures quickly. Aizawa-sensei and Yamada-sensei were very kind even though I know I make them nervous. Or, Yamada-sensei at least. It probably would have been, worse if they hadn't helped me. I wasn't sure what to do when I got so sick so suddenly, but they both did know how to help. I'm very thankful. I'm pleased to hear that, Midoriya-kun. Nizu's smile softens. I apologize that people have been, and will continue to be, unfortunately, wary of you. Please don't take it as a slight against your character, though I know it's difficult not to. I really do sympathize with your position here. Thank you. Midoriya bows his head slightly. I know people aren't upset with me, but the me in your world. It's very confusing, but it does. It's sad because everyone here is. You're all my teachers, but you don't know me and I haven't even met Class 1A yet, but they're my friends in my reality. That sounds quite difficult. Nizu sympathizes offhandedly. Midoriya gives a nod, wiping at wet eyes. It's a dagger through his heart for Shota to see, but he knows there's not much he can do. It's not like he can force his coworkers or students to just be okay with Midoriya. The most he can hope for is them not immediately lashing out. Sorry, the teen says after clearing his throat. When he looks up again, the tears are gone. Aizawa-sensei said you had some rules? Guidelines, the principal corrects easily. And some of these apply to both of you. Shota isn't surprised by this, he'd expected it. Though I trust my staff and my students, I believe it's for the best that Midoriya-kun shadow you, Aizawa-kun. This'll mean him attending all of your classes, including heroics and when you're teaching the second and third years. I would like you to keep him within sight during the school day. You're welcome to have him participate in your lessons if you see fit, that will be completely up to you, but I trust we're on the same page when I say no harm should come to him. We are, Shota gives a serious nod. But wait, what if I'm participating in something like heroics? Midoriya PPS his head. I can hold my own, sensei, I'm in your class. I have good quirk control, and I'd never hurt anyone. I can take a hit too, it's unfair for them to have to hold back. It's not you I don't trust, Midoriya, Shota sighs, angling his head towards the teen. You've got to understand that people are afraid of Deku. Afraid of you. I don't want an innocent sparring session to end with you injured, or worse, because someone gets scared and reacts in fear. I have good students, but fear is a dangerous emotion, Midoriya, and I can't fault them for being scared. This isn't a punishment, Nizu continues. This is simply us being cautious for your well-being. Our knowledge of the quirk you're being affected by is quite limited. We don't know what would happen if something happened to you. If you're gravely injured or killed here, you very well might be in your reality too. There are too many unknown variables for us to just let you participate to the extent you're used to, as much as I'd love to do so. We must face the facts here. As unpleasant as they are, your counterpart is a known villain. We are not in your reality, Midoriya-kun, even if it looks like we are. Midoriya wilts, managing a small defeated nod. It shouldn't hurt Shota's heart as much as it does, but it's for the best. He can't argue this, it would be illogical to do so. He'd rather have a sad Midoriya than a dead Midoriya. You won't be benched, Shota offers as consolation, even if he's sure it doesn't really help right now, you'll be restricted. I can handle my students, but I don't want to see you hurt if someone starts something under the impression that you're Deku, and I'm not fast enough to intervene. I understand, the child whispers, and Shota really doesn't believe him. He thinks Midoriya is offering up what he thinks they want to hear, and that he really doesn't understand these restrictions. Shota has to remind himself that Midoriya is a child, and that to a child this does seem unfair, even if it's completely necessary. If Nizu comes to the same conclusion, Shota doesn't know. The rodent's attention shifts between them before he clears his throat. In addition, we should also try to keep Midoriya-kun away from Yagi-san, which we did mention yesterday. That, fortunately, I don't see as being much of an issue, what with all the time Yagi-san has been spending working with the detective and the 3rd years since the school year started. Midoriya nods again, but this time Shota feels like he's the one who doesn't understand completely. Why does he get the feeling that there's more to this specific restriction than meets the eye? Besides those 2 restrictions, I'd suggest you tread carefully when it comes to telling the rest of the staff and the students. I'm going to ask that you only do so when Aizawa-kun is around, Midoriya-kun. For the most part, I believe the teachers are fairly understanding. This isn't the first wayward quirk we've encountered in heroics, and I'm sure it won't be the last. We'll still make it a general rule of thumb to avoid the name Deku, even if I suspect some might be able to connect the dots with just your name. Aizawa-kun managed, and I suspect Yamada-kun might have as well. Shota offers a shallow nod. Nizu returns a nod like he'd expected as much. I believe that covers everything for now. I will keep you both informed if I hear anything from Detective Tsukachi. Please inform me of any incidents, and if my assistance is needed. I suspect there might be some unsavory encounters. You are a student at UE, your ID card is proof enough of that, and I take my students' safety quite seriously. They leave Nizu's office pretty quickly after that. Midoriya is oddly quiet, but Shota doesn't have time to dwell on it. If he wants another coffee before homeroom, they'll need to be fast. The halls are filled with students at this point, it being so close to classes starting, but in his uniform and with his head ducked, Midoriya blends in well enough. It's a blessing that Deku is as shy and careful as he is. His face isn't well known, and even his civilian name has been kept fairly hush-hush. When they arrive at the teacher's offices, Shota holds the door open and gestures the kid in. He doubts Midoriya has been in the office in his UE, since it's rare for any student to be granted entrance, and he thinks he's right by how Midoriya bites his lip and hesitates. It takes a second for them to be noticed, but when they are, the usual chatter dies off and Midoriya wilts in an attempt to make himself as small as humanly possible. Aizawa. Snipe is the brave one to break the silence. They all know his students, and for the most part, most of the teachers know most of the students. Midoriya sticks out like a sore thumb. Isn't it a bit late in the year for a new student to be starting? Hang on, I didn't hear anything about a new student. Kayama turns to study the teenager. Midoriya shifts awkwardly, keeping his head ducked. Was there an email or something sent out that I missed? He's not a new student, and it's last minute. Shota frowns, glancing quickly back at Midoriya quickly. It's not permanent. He'll be sitting in during my classes only. Just your classes? Hound Dog PPS his head. Why? Don't you teach 1st, 2nd, and 3rd years? That's a bit odd. Shota tucks his hands into his pockets as he squints at the group. He takes a second to study over each of them, mostly searching for Yagi's face in the crowd, which is thankfully missing. He hopes this doesn't backfire. He hesitates, suddenly unsure. It's not like he can't not tell them, they do deserve to know. It is a matter of security, really. Not just the school's safety, but Midoriya's as well. There will definitely be problems if someone misidentifies Midoriya as Deku and no one knows the boy is an innocent doppelganger in a bad situation. Is Midoriya Izuku? It's pin-drop silent as the introduction soaks in. Shota watches on high alert as his coworkers' faces twist as they process what he said. Some just look confused, while others settle into looks of fear and disbelief. He even spots anger flash across some of his coworkers' faces. Probably not good, but there's no easy way to ease them into this. He doesn't have time to introduce them all one by one, and he's almost certain word of mouth would fly faster than he's able to break the news if he tried. Shota does a quick scan around the room as the silence gets heavier, more cautious. Most of the staff is staring at him like he's insane, while others look genuinely scared. Hizashi has perked up where he's sitting at his desk, And Shota appreciates the pitying look he's sending both Shota and Midoriya. Midoriya Izuku? Vlad King repeats, tone hinting towards danger. A danger Midoriya recognizes, if the way he subtly shifts closer and half hides himself behind Shota is any indication. It's a smart move, since Shota's already squaring his shoulder and scowling right back at the bulky man. That can't seriously be, Kayama stares in disbelief. If that's really him, he should be in cuffs. He should be in prison. How the hell did he even get on campus, Aizawa? What's he done to you and why the hell are you so calm? He's dangerous. No, Shota scoffs, trying to keep himself for letting the irritation show. This is worse than he'd expected. He'd at least thought they'd let him explain. Hisashi had been shocked too, but he'd let Shota explain before letting his emotions get out of control. He's done nothing wrong, now would you all just? The villain's obviously done something to Aizawa. Snipe growls in horror. There's no way Aizawa would let Deku wander free like that, not around the kids. Not after the USJ. Someone restrain Deku before he does something. Call the police. Hang on a second, Shota snaps, stepping fully in front of Midoriya as his quirk flares just in case any of his coworkers decide to try and use theirs, Kayama specifically, who could put them to sleep. Most of the staff bristles when his quirk strips theirs away, and he knows they're offended he's using his on them. He sees Hisashi rising to his feet as well, ready to join in defending. Hisashi's voice is low and calming, placating, Hey everyone, just calm down a bit, you dig? There's obviously a reason for all this, yeah? Listen to what Aizawa's gotta say. Calm down. Vlad snaps, stalking toward Shota, but still keeping his distance like he's afraid the cowering child behind Shota will suddenly spring up and attack him. You want us to calm down when Aizawa's brought him into our school, Mike? What reason could there be for Aizawa to have a villain with him? Hisashi flounders for a second before his expression hardens. Shota's jaw twitches as anger settles in his stomach. Listen, Shota snarls, you all need to calm the hell down. This kid did nothing to me and he's done nothing to any of you either, so back the F up or I'll make you. This is not Deku. He's... Shota's anger lapses as he tries to decide of what Midoriya could be, something that will get the message across without being completely ridiculous or mind-boggling, because he'll give them the benefit of the doubt to be shell-shocked when it comes to alternate reality jumping quirks. Besides, he needs to focusing diffusing the situation before things get out of control. The explanation can come after when everyone has cooled off enough to logically think. He's an exchange student. From where, Tartarus? Vlad snarls, arms crossing over his chest. Shota bristles at venomous quip, twitching with a need to strangle Vlad with his capture weapon. That vile villain belongs in prison, Aizawa, not in our school. You know exactly what he's done. How can he be an exchange student? 13 shifts nervously. Shota's at least glad they aren't letting fearful anger take over, but genuinely terrified isn't much better. He does understand though, 13 had also been at the USJ when Deku and Shigaraki had launched their attack. Aizawa, don't you remember what he did? He's a villain. Now. Nizu pops up behind them. Everyone, please take a second to collect yourselves. Aizawa-kun is accompanying our guest, and that was not a very warm welcome he received from the teachers of this fine educational establishment. Midoriya startles at the sudden appearance of the principal, Shota does not. He's used to the rat popping up at random times from literally anywhere. I must say, teachers, Nizu continues, nose twitching in that tiny tick that conveys his anger, I'm quite appalled in what I've just witnessed. I had hoped my staff would consider the fact that Midoriya-kun is here accompanied by a trusted UE teacher, wearing a school uniform and very obviously not restrained in any way, but it seems you were all too quick to emotions to think rationally. That's disappointing. Nizu-san, that's our newest student who will be here for an undetermined amount of time, approved by both the police department as well as myself, Nizu cuts off with a clipped voice. The child with Aizawa-kun is not the villain Deku, although they share an uncanny resemblance, no? And if you had waited a moment and let Aizawa-kun explain as he'd been trying to do, instead of verbally and very near physically attacking a student under the protection of this very school, you would have known that. He's a student under Yui's what? Since you wouldn't let Aizawa-kun explain Midoriya-kun's presence, I will, and in doing so, you will all be receiving a formal reprimand for your carelessness and failure to logically assess a sensitive situation of high stress. I'm quite disappointed. I must say, I expected as much from the students, but not seasoned pros. Truly concerning. How can I trust you to teach the students to think with their heads and not with their hearts when you are not setting an example? Jumping to a conclusion whilst ignoring the facts laid before you is dangerous, not just for yourselves, but for everyone involved. But Nizin, Vlad digs his own grave. Deku's a villain? He certainly is. Nizu agrees darkly. Deku is a villain, but Midoriya-kun is not. The rodent steps past Shota and Midoriya, and Shota sees the bright colors of Midoriya's ID from his reality held in Nizu's paws, which are laced together over the small of his back. Proof. It's hard to deny the card. Shota had tried when he first met the kid, but it truly is Nizu inspected authentic. Hell, it's a reality difference short of their Yui's security accepting it. The rodent hands the card to the first teacher he reaches, who just so happens to be Vlad himself, who decided to act as a protector, positioning himself between the other teachers and Shota and his student. Vlad takes the card without looking away from Shota as he does so. They're leveling each other heated glares, and unlike every other time Vlad sparks up that stupid class rivalry, Shota is not about to back down. Nizu makes a clicking noise with his tongue, voice stiff when he continues. Sekijiro-kun, I'm going to have to ask that you cease the glaring. I understand it's considered quite rude to you humans. Now, please study, then circulate the card in your hand around to the rest of the staff. I trust you all will be able to identify exactly what it is you're being shown. I would like everyone to take a good look at that card before another word is said. Nizu's voice holds a finality that none of the teachers are stupid enough to challenge. He's incredibly scary for a creature so small. Oh, Nizu hums as an afterthought, and, please be careful with it, it is not ours to damage, and it will be returned exactly as it was lent to me. In pristine condition. Please have a very good look at that ID, and then, when you're satisfied, pass it to the next person and take a seat at your desk. We're going to be having a discussion. Vlad glares at Shota and Midoriya for a second longer before finally managing to drag his gaze down to the card in hand. Shota's pleasure in the way his eyes widen and his jaw goes slack. He squints down hard at it like he just can't process it, jaw then clenching as he quickly flips it over, inspecting the back intently before flipping it back around to Midoriya's face. His brows furrow as he glares down at the card. This can't be. It is, Nizu says flatly. Make note of the date it was issued, and then pass it on, Sekijiro-kun. There are a lot who need to see that, and we have very little time before you all need to get to your classes. Slowly but surely, Midoriya's ID card circulates around to all the teachers. Shota does not move, and behind him, Midoriya is frozen in fear too. His heart breaks for the kid. More trauma to add to his growing collection, the teachers he knows and trusts literally taking one look at him and condemning him on spot. Perfect. Shota had known this could be a possibility, but that didn't prepare him for it actually happening. Aizawa-kun. Shota lowers his glare to Nizu before he can think to settle the dark look. Thankfully, his boss doesn't seem to mind. The office is near silent, everyone sitting at their desks like scolded school children. There's a general weight of confusion in the room, but also levels of varying guilt. It shouldn't make Shota as pleased as it does. Though guilt doesn't help the trembling child behind him. Nizu sends a sharp glance over his staff before turning back to the underground hero and his student. Please grab what you came in for and then take Midoriya-kun out to calm down before classes start. I will explain the situation to our staff, and I trust they will take my explanation seriously if they didn't bother to take yours. Now, I'm sure you'll have your hands full come homeroom, so please make haste. If any class shouldn't be left to their own devices for long, it's Class 1A. Shota only does as directed when Hizashi takes his place as Midoriya's human shield. Hizashi, the saint he is, crouches down and says something Shota's too angry to make out to the boy, and Midoriya gives a shaky nod in response. When Hizashi stands up to his full height, Shota finally sets away towards the coffee pot. He doesn't delay pouring himself a mug of coffee, shooting his coworkers a dark look as he does so. He can't believe not one of them considered the possibility that there was more to the situation than what they saw. Not a single one of them took a second to assess the situation past the knee-jerk reaction of villain. He really does understand it's insane. He'd been there just yesterday, but Midoriya had had him vouching for him this time. It wasn't like the kid just strolled into the school by himself. He was in a uniform, he'd passed their high-tech security, and he was being skirted by a trusted member of the staff. The explanation was being offered to them, even if none of them cared to listen to it. He knows his reaction wasn't much better, but the difference there was no one knew what the hell was going on when Midoriya first approached him. There wasn't anyone offering an explanation to Shota, there was just a teenager who introduced himself as the current most feared villain in Japan, after essentially tracking down him on patrol. Of course he'd be on alert. But when they'd taken a second to really think, to assess the situation, and when an explanation had been offered, to him, and Tsukachi and Nizu, they'd listened. They'd been convinced. His colleagues didn't have that excuse. Shota takes his coffee and stalks back to Midoriya, knowing his aura is dark and angry by the way Hizashi frowns softly when he draws closer. Shota shakes his head when Hizashi looks like he's debating saying something, and the blonde just nods knowingly, stepping away when Shota was close enough to the teen to set a guiding hand between the boy's shoulder blades. He pushes the office door open with his elbow and doesn't bother looking back, just ushers the child away from the threats. He's quick to get them away from the office, guiding Midoriya through the halls swiftly. The teen keeps pace silently, eyes downcast. "How are you holding up?" Shota asks when they're far enough away from the office that Midoriya has almost stopped trembling. Shota's not used to having a student tucked so close to him, but he knows it would be cruel to push Midoriya away after that. He wonders what sort of bond Midoriya's Aizawa has with his students, and wonders further if it's anything like Shota's own with his kids. They've all definitely gotten closer since moving into the dorms, but he wonders if Midoriya himself had played the part of glue holding them all together. It wouldn't surprise him. I'm okay, the boy stutters out, looking anything but okay. Shota glances down at him, mouth pulling into a frown when he notices the kid Ivzy at his white shirt, just over his heart. His entire fist is a pale bone white as his grip clenches. "You warned me. I should have been. I should have been prepared for something like that. It was just. I thought Vlad-sensei was going to. I thought he was gonna. Why, you were right, sensei." For the first time in Shota's life, he wishes he wasn't right. He wishes he'd been wrong, and that the other teachers had hesitantly accepted Midoriya like Hizashi had. What if ing mess? I don't know if. Midoriya swallows thickly, and Shota glances down once again and sees bright, watery eyes staring back up at him. "I don't know how I'll take my friends doing that, sensei. My classmates. It was bad enough my teachers did, but I don't know if I can handle my friends saying things like that. I feel sick." Shota stops walking now, uncaring that the bell goes off just as he does and the halls are suddenly empty as kids scurry to class. Midoriya stops too, but only because Shota grabs a handful of the blazer where his hand hadn't moved from where he'd been guiding the kid. "Midoriya," he calls softly, "wait a second. Why you're going to be late?" "Sensei." Midoriya turns to him with glassy eyes. His shoulders are shaking, and his face is pinched like he's trying so hard to keep that mask of okay on. "You're never late. Do you want to do this today?" The kid wilts like he'd suddenly realized Shota can see he's not holding it together as well as he thinks he is. More tears rush to his eyes, but he's quick to wipe them on his sleeve. "You don't need to do everything at once, Midoriya," Shota tells him calmly. "You deserve a second to decompress and think about this. That was hard, and that was grown adults who should not have jumped to conclusions the way they did. I truthfully don't know how my students will react to this, and I can't be sure they won't react similarly to the teachers. It's a lot to process, kid." Shota pauses, surveying over Midoriya, but he's still just trying not to cry. "Just remember, problem child, there's nothing wrong with needing a bit of time to process what just happened. I can get Hizashi to cover my homeroom class if you want to go back to the apartment for a while. You do not have to force yourself to do everything today. There's nothing wrong with needing a break." "No, The kid whimpers, rubbing harder at his eyes. I need to know. I need to do this. I can't. I can't just relax if I'm afraid of what they'll say, what they'll do. It's like it's looming over my head and suffocating me. I know they're not my friends B, but they are. To me. Okay, Shota nods. I understand. Midoriya is still sniffling, rubbing his eyes raw like he's trying to press his tears back into his eyes before they can fall. Shota feels awful. This is a child who'd suddenly been dumped in a place where he's public enemy number one. Where everyone he knows and loves considers him a villain and are treating him accordingly. That would be a hard pill for anyone to swallow, but this is a child. What do you need right now, Midoriya? There's a pause. Midoriya shifts awkwardly at Shota's side, still wiping at his eyes. The underground hero waits patiently for an answer, whether it be a request for something, or just an unconvincing nothing from the teenager that Shota won't push. The teenager cuts himself off, choking on a stuttered breath. Can I have a hug, sensei? That's probably a weird request, and I'm sorry, The man doesn't bother answering, just wraps an arm around the kid and tries not to feel that annoying flurry of heartbreak and fondness cloud his chest. Midoriya cuts himself off abruptly, melting into the hug. He returns it with enough force that Shota wobbles momentarily in an attempt to keep them both standing. The teenager hardly wastes a second before burying his face in Shota's capture weapon and lacing his arms around the man's upper chest. He wonders how long the kid had been craving affection as simple as a hug, too scared to ask for it but needing it. Or maybe he didn't think he could ask for it here. There's probably a lot going on in the kid's head that he couldn't even begin to understand. Shota blows out a sigh through his nose as he lets his chin fall onto the top of the teenager's head. He lets his hand rub up the kid's back, careful not to spill the coffee in his other hand. The hug doesn't last long, Midoriya tearing himself away carefully and taking 2 tiny steps back when he decides it's been long enough. He gives a water half smile as he roughly drags his sleeve over his face. Sorry. Shota frowns, but doesn't bother saying anything. It's starting to seem like a lost cause to get Midoriya to stop apologizing for things he can't help. And Shota doesn't think he really needs a reprimand, as soft and logical as it is, after what just transpired. I'm ready. Midoriya does manage a nervous little half smile. I think. Shota gives a nod, and doesn't question him. He can't keep pushing, even if it does feel like Midoriya is trying to take everything in too fast. He's trying to rush this, and Shota fears he'll only end up getting hurt that way. Still, it probably shouldn't be delayed, and if Midoriya is ready to do it, they should while he's got his nerve. They walk side by side the rest of the way to the 1A classroom. Shota can hear his kids from down the hall. Bickering and chatting. Laughing. Ida's voice trying to corral them and settle them down. He sighs internally. They pause for a second outside the door, and as they do, the room falls silent and desperate shuffles are the only sound. Midoriya's nervous expression dips to one of amusement for just a second before the fear and anxiety is back full force. He shuffles anxiously, staring at the door like it'll magically open and eat him. Shota waits another second for good measure, sipping at his coffee. He brushes the kid out of the way carefully as he throws the door open. The silence carries on as he glares uninterestedly into the room, all eyes on him. We have a guest, he tells the students without greeting them. Straight to the point. I have a personal student who will be sitting in on all of my classes for a while, so I expect you all to be respectful. Shota steps into the room and gestures the teen in behind him. He gives Midoriya props for how he manages to keep his head held high, even as he jitters anxiously in place after settling a step or so in front of Shota. The boy scans the room, offering a bashful half smile. Hi. Class. Shota gestures the hand not holding his coffee towards Midoriya. This is... Deku, growls a familiarly angry voice, and then Shota hears the telltale sound of crackling sparks as an ashen-haired blur barrels at the green-haired teen. Midoriya braces for impact, protecting his face, and the most Shota can do in that blink of a second is cancel out Bakugo's quirk so no serious damage can happen. The blonde doesn't seem bothered as his quirk is erased, continuing straight for Midoriya. He doesn't waste a second as he grabs 2 fistfuls of the other boy's uniform and lifts him up threateningly so only Midoriya's toes are on the ground. The green-haired teen looks afraid, but not as afraid as Shota would have expected. "What the F are you doing here, Deku?" Shota silently mourns his mug of coffee as he prepares to drop it so he can get both hands on his capture weapon and restrain Bakugo. He feels like an idiot for forgetting. Of course Bakugo Katsuki would know what Deku looks like. He'd been kidnapped by the League. He'd probably interacted with Deku, not that the teen told them much about what the League of Villains actually wanted with him. Shota had expected for none of his students to piece it together when he introduced the kid. Midoriya Izuku was not a name that was circulated. The news outlets and other heroes spread the name Deku. Easily remembered with no chance of confusion. He hadn't even said Midoriya's name, and already the entire class knew. Kaken, please. Midoriya winces, not fighting back whatsoever. Shota's mouth dries at the childish nickname? Were he and his Bakugo Katsuki close in his reality? Shota never would have guessed that one. "Don't do this, you're a hero now." Just as Shota's about to drop his coffee mug and WHP his capture weapon around Bakugo, the ashy-haired teen roughly shoves Midoriya away as if the green-haired teenager had physically burned him. Bakugo recoils, tugging his hands into his chest as he takes 3 measured steps back, shaking in place as Midoriya stumbles back into Shota. The coffee sloshes over onto his hand when Midoriya makes impact, but he can't even begin to care about the burning pain of hot coffee sinking into his skin. "What? Who?" Bakugo looks like he's suddenly seen a ghost, pointing a shaking finger at Midoriya. "Who the F is that?" Izuku watches wide-eyed as Kaken stumbles away from him like he'd burned him instead of the other way around. Anxiety pits in his stomach, and dread just makes him feel sick as he stumbles back into Aizawa-sensei before he manages to find his bearings. "Who?" Kaken breathes out desperately, like he can't manage to draw in a deep breath. He lifts a shaking finger and points directly at Izuku. "Who the F is that?" It probably shouldn't hurt as much as it does to hear Kaken mutter those words accusingly, and it takes a good, long second for Izuku to manage to drag himself around to the fact that this isn't his Bakugo Katsuki, the one who bullied him throughout middle school and took it as a personal threat when Izuku managed to scrape his way into Yui with All Might's help. This is the Bakugo Katsuki whose Midoriya Izuku is a villain. They're real, legit enemies here. Izuku doesn't know what the hell happened between them, what Deku did to Kaken to warrant a reaction like that, but it makes him nervous. The way Kaken is looking at him makes him wish the ground would crack open and swallow him whole. Kaken has looked at him with a lot of emotions over the years, anger tending to be recurring one, but he's never looked at Izuku genuinely afraid. Izuku takes a small step back, hardly aware of the fact he's now completely pressing back against Aizawa-sensei who is. He's not Izuku's Aizawa-sensei. A hand settles on his shoulder and he hates the way he startles. He hears a second splatter of liquid hitting the floor and swirls around when his brain catches up to the fact more of Sensei's coffee has spilled. Because of him. "Oh!" Izuku cries out, "I'm so sorry. Your coffee, Sensei." He has half a mind to tear himself away from Aizawa-sensei and force himself deeper into the classroom, but the other half of his mind wants him to turn tail and dodge around the man so he can disappear from sight. Neither of those things are smart. 1A is now watching him like he's a mix of some advanced puzzle, but also a threat that needs to be studied and monitored due to Kaken's reaction, and after the reaction of the teachers in the office just now, he knows anyone who has seen, or even heard of Deku, won't hesitate to detain him, by whatever means necessary. He's in a hero school. He knows a lot of the quirks currently attending the school this year, assuming that things aren't different like his class wasn't. There are some cool quirks, definitely, but they're all terrifying to think about when he thinks about them being used against him. He's scared. There is no lesser evil in this situation, and his life right now is genuinely in Aizawa-sensei's hands. "Sensei," Kaken barks out, taking another tiny step away. "Who the hell is that?" Aizawa-sensei is quiet for a second, taking in the scene. He looks between Kaken and Izuku himself before glancing out at the class. They're all quiet, watching and studying, trying to figure out what it is they're looking at. "Who do you think it is?" Aizawa-sensei finally speaks, ushering Izuku into the room. Kaken takes quick steps back as Izuku is all but guided into the room. He thinks briefly about digging his heels into the ground and putting up resistance, but he doesn't dare. And unless he uses one for all to his advantage, and this isn't really a one for all type of situation, Aizawa-sensei is stronger than him. Aizawa-sensei sets his mug down on the desk when they're close enough, then dries his red, almost blistering fingers dry on his hero uniform. When he looks up, he glances past Izuku at the students remaining in their seat before his attention tips back to Kaken. Sensei looks thoughtfully between Izuku and Kaken for a long second before he finally gestures to Izuku at his side without taking his eyes off of Kaken. Who is this, Bakugo? That's... Kaken starts before he snaps his mouth shut, glaring at Izuku. The teen in question tries not to move, staying statue stiff at the underground hero's side. I don't know who that is, Kaken snaps. That's not Midoriya Izuku. It's not him, but it's... What the fucking hell is going on here? That looks like... But he's not Deku. How do you know that? Are you saying it is Deku? Kaken snarls, red eyes locking on the pro as his lip curls into a scowl. That's pretty fucking messed up, Sensei, if you're bringing Deku into the school. Whispers fill the heavy silence as the students talk. It's apparently now starting to sink in just who Izuku is, or who they believe he is. A quick glare from Aizawa-sensei has them quieting instantly before the teacher's attention is back on Kaken. I'm not confirming, nor denying anything, Baku. Is it, or isn't it Deku? You said it's not, and you're the one who met him, aren't you? Which is it? Izuku doesn't know what's happening now. Why is Sensei not confirming that Izuku is not the Deku they know? Why isn't he telling Kaken that he's right and that Izuku is not their Deku? What is the pro up to? What's he after? That's not the Deku I know, the ashen-haired teen grits out. Who the F is that? Midoriya Izuku, Aizawa-sensei introduces calmly, still watching in interest as Kaken doesn't dare to draw his attention away from Izuku. But you already know that. Kaken stills, eyes narrowed on Izuku. No sheet, Sensei, but who the hell is he? That's not Midoriya Izuku. That's not Deku. Deku hasn't been. Not since, he's not. That's not him, so who the hell is he? Catch. Do not fucking call me that, Kaken lashes out, pointing a now accusatory finger at Izuku. His lips are still pressed in the scowl, and his eyes are quick to jump from a scolded Izuku back to Aizawa-sensei. Who the hell is he? What the hell is he doing here? Just as I said earlier, Sensei huffs calmly, he's a personal student who will be shadowing me for the unforeseeable future. He's a guest here. So treat him accordingly no matter what you think you know about him. Stop towing around this, Sensei. Kaken finally decides to throw caution to the wind, marching around the desk to stop squarely in front of Izuku. He pokes his finger against Izuku's chest hard enough that the green-haired teen is sure it'll leave a bruise. I don't know who the F you are, but if you touch a single one of my a-hole extra classmates, I will blow you to fucking pieces. You hear me, imposter? And now you sound like my Kaken. Sorta. Izuku gives a nervous laugh, subtly shifting away. It's refreshing not hearing the telltale sound of sparks coming from Kaken's hands. Maybe this Kaken fears Aizawa-sensei a little more than Izuku's does. I've never heard you defend our classmates. I wonder what's changed here. What the F, do you mean my Kaken? Kaken fumes, but he doesn't step away from Izuku again. And, what's this about our classmates? Ashido asks with a frown. Oh, I just... Midoriya was hit by a quirk, Aizawa-sensei finally offers, instantly quieting his class with nothing but his words, a quirk in his reality which somehow sent him here to our reality. He's not the villain known as Deku, he's a student who attends this school and is in my class, your class, where he's from. I understand this is a lot to take in, but trust me as your teacher that I wouldn't do anything that could possibly harm you students. Midoriya is safe, and we're sure of that. Kaminari raises his hand but doesn't bother waiting to be called on. Seriously? Because that sounds so cool. Alternate realities, that's like something outta a comic book or something. Izuku isn't sure cool is what he's settled for when describing this whole mess, but the thought, in theory, definitely does sound sorta cool. Maybe not when it's happening to you, but looking in from the outside. Wait. Kirishima straightens up. Does that mean there's two Dekus here now? That seems to be the most plausible case. Aizawa-sensei shrugs. But we can't know for sure. Deku sticks to the shadows, so we can't know for sure whether or not he's still in Out Universe. A quirk that swaps two people in two different worlds is practically unheard of, but, then again, so is a quirk that sends someone to a reality they don't belong in. That's wild. Kaminari flops back against his backrest similarly to how he is when he's short-circuited. Izuku thinks Sensei might have just blown his mind. Aizawa-sensei. Ida raises his hand. He waits in the impatient patient sort of way until Aizawa-sensei glances over with a raised eyebrow. The idea of alternate realities is nothing more than a theory. How can you be sure that that isn't really Deku? How do you know this isn't a trick? He's a villain. Midoriya has been cleared by both Principal Nizu and the detective Tsukachi, who most of you were interviewed by after the USJ attack. Some of you might remember his quirk, which is lie detector. All you students need to know is that Midoriya was arrested, detained and interviewed under the suspicion that he was Deku. We followed protocol as we would with any villain, but he's since been released. The man pauses, sipping at his coffee whilst looking exhausted. He scans the class thoughtfully before clearing his throat and continuing. Nizu, Tsukachi and myself all determined that he most certainly is not Deku after that interview. Midoriya has also provided evidence that is not of this reality, and ignoring all those facts would be illogical. Deku is good at what he does, I'm sure we can all agree on that, but he's not that good. Even so, Yaoyorozu shifts uncertainly, glancing quickly at Izuku before averting her gaze. Are you sure we should be trusting him? If I'm understanding this right, he's still Midoriya Izuku Deku. What makes them different from reality to reality? That's not Deku. Kaken finally steps away. Izuku lets out a puff of air when he's no longer pinned in place by Kaken's tense frame. You extras are wasting your breath. I know Deku, and this guy isn't him. I mean, Kirishima sits up straight as Kaken returns to his seat with a grim expression. Bakubro is the only one of us to have actually met Deku, right? We should probably trust him. And Sensei too. Sensei almost died for us at the USJ, you guys really think he'd bring a villain to class? Since when is Bakugo the trusted judge of character? Izuku's attention snaps to the voice he's not as familiar with, grin widening when he spots who it is that took his place. He's the same guy who refers to all of us as extras. Shinso. Izuku beams, startling not just Shinso himself, but the class and Aizawa-sensei. I didn't think you'd be here. That's awesome. I'm so glad you made it into one. I know how much you wanted to get into this class. Well, you did in, my reality. Just. Wait, you know me? Shinso looks torn between cautious, impressed, and a bit afraid. That's terrifying. Sorry? I know all of you. Izuku swallows hard. I mean, and not you guys directly. Obviously because, we've never met here, but, in my reality. You're my classmates too, and we've, fought together, like, a lot, like at the USJ, and, Todoroki, Ida and I fought, and then at the training camp and rescuing Kaken from the League of Villains. We all had to work together. Izuku finds himself quieting in volume as he continues. He can't quite place the looks on his classmates' faces, drawn between multiple different emotions at once on each different classmate. Sorry, Izuku winces. I know that's probably creepy to you guys, but it's just we're all classmates where I'm from. So, you rescued me? Kaken is the one to break the silence, staring intently at Izuku. Once again, Izuku can't place the emotion on Kaken's face. It's not angry, but he still can't. It doesn't look like it belongs there. Whatever it is. Why yeah, Izuku swallows. Again, nervously wringing his fingers together, Kirishima, Todoroki, Ida, Yaoyorozu and I all banded together to rescue you from Shigaraki and the League. There was a tracker that Yaoyorozu made and had stuck to the Nomu during the summer camp attack, so we followed it to you. Sorta. Izuku pauses, blinking twice as he mentally runs through the rescue mission. I mean, it wasn't that easy, of course. You weren't even at the warehouse when we got there, but we did get you in the end. Aizawa-sensei was not happy. Izuku can almost feel Aizawa-sensei's eyes boring into him. That calculating and disapproving look. Something in the way he's staring tells Izuku that there probably wasn't a rescue party for Kaken here, and if there was, it was nothing like the one Izuku's talking about. Wait. Kirishima's tensed up now. How'd you know we plan to? Red eyes shoot to where Aizawa-sensei is now glowering in Kirishima's direction. I mean, not that we plan to do anything involving rescuing Bakugo because, you know what? Never mind. Forget I said anything. Izuku blinks at Kirishima before glance back at where Aizawa-sensei looks done with the day already. You're the reason they targeted me. What? Izuku yelps in surprise, eyes shooting towards Kaken. What does that mean, Kaken? Why would I? You're the one who convinced them I could be bribed into joining their stupid villain gang. Fire power or whatever bullshit you had in your stupid head. You told me so yourself. If I can be a villain, Bakugo Katsuki, then so can you. You are the most villainous person I've even known. Are you really cut out for heroics? Kaken sneers, mimicking someone else's voice. First time I see you after you. Kaken grits his teeth, looking away sharply as he continues without finishing the thought. And that's the bullshit you say. If I hadn't have been chained to a chair, I probably would have killed you. You changed, and it's fucking bullshit. I'm supposed to be the a-hole, not you. Izuku feels sick as that settles in his stomach. He'd done that? He'd wanted to convince Kaken to join the villains? Izuku knew Kaken was rough around the edges, but he still strongly believed he'd be a great hero. To know he tried to. It made his stomach coil. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for someone else's actions. Aizawa-sensei snaps under his breath, and Izuku's the only one who startles, so he thinks he's the only one to hear the man. He bows his head like a scolded child anyways. Wait, so if that's not how your Bakugo got kidnapped in your reality, then how did the villains decide to kidnap him? Ojiro asks carefully. Did they randomly select him, or was there a reason? Oh, Izuku bites his lip. Well, my Kaken is. He's fiery. That's a nice way to say he's an a-hole, Siro mutters under his breath to Jairu, who snickers behind her hand. Kaken snaps a glare at the two of them, but doesn't lash out. Good. And, strong-willed. He said some things during the festival that sorta made him come off like an, a-hole, I guess? But, I think what really caught Shigaraki's eye was the medal ceremony. Kaken was angry, and, didn't feel like he quite deserved his win because during the last fight, against Todoroki, he didn't think Todoroki gave it his all like when he fought me, so to get him up onto the podium the teachers. They sorta muzzled and restrained him so he could receive his first-place medal. They muzzled him on live television? Sensei sounds genuinely disgusted. Who the hell approved that? Because I hope to God it wasn't me. I don't know, Izuku squeaks, turning to look at where the man is leaning on his arms against his desk. I only saw it later, after the festival was over. I was having surgery on my arms during the awarding ceremony and... You were having surgery on your arms? Sensei's voice sounds deadly serious, and Izuku has an uncomfortable feeling that he's unknowingly digging himself a grave. During the sports festival? We let you use your quirk at a school event until you needed surgery? We will. Izuku's this on his bottom lip in an attempt to organize his thoughts in these specific events. I was still, figuring out my quirk, so I hurt myself a bit and I also... sorta, went to hard trying to convince Todoroki-kun to use his fire side and he did, and I just don't think I was quite prepared for him to go, full force. I use my fire side? Todoroki chimes in from the back of the room, ping his head curiously. I don't. Oh, Izuku feels so lost. You did. I think it was the first time in a long time, but you use it more often now. But that's why Kaken was so upset because you used your ice and fire when fighting me, but you resorted back to just your ice when you fought him. It's starting to feel like he can't think clearly. It's that kind of lost that rattles your brain around and makes it hard to think about anything. He doesn't even feel like he could walk a straight line right now with how his head is spinning. Things are so different. They're the same, but they're not. These events happened, but not like they did here, and he can't help but let the two realities meld together in a way. Things that didn't happen to him feel like they did, and things that did happen to him feel like they shouldn't have. because he's the only one who knows about them. Someone with his name and face, essentially him, has been out terrorizing heroes, and Izuku doesn't understand why. He'd never in a million years do that. He idolizes heroes. Heroes are good. They help people, like All Might and Aizawa-sensei have helped him. Why would this reality's Midoriya Izuku turn evil? Become a villain? What happened? What changed? Hang on a fucking second, Kaken's glaring again. You used a quirk to the point you needed surgery where you're from? What the F dash? Izuku gives a nod, knowing that too. Be true. He's still got the scars on his arms and he still hangs onto Recovery Girl's grave threat and warning that occasionally haunt his dreams. Kaken glares harder. Deku's quirkless? Alright, not his Kaken. The Midoriya Izuku in this reality is still quirkless if All Might didn't give him one for all. He knows Deku here doesn't have one for all because according to Nizu and the detective, as far as Izuku's deciphered, All Might has been focusing on his successor. He's curious who the successor in this reality is if it's not Izuku himself. I manifested a quirk, Izuku offers quietly, during the entrance exam for Yui. I'm a late bloomer. There's a pause. Sensei, as Yui raises her hand but doesn't wait to be called on either. Does that mean Deku's going to manifest a quirk here too, Karo? No, Aizawa-sensei shakes his head firmly. I doubt it. If Deku was going to manifest a quirk, he would have around the same time Midoriya did. From what we know thus far, generally, everything is roughly the same from reality to reality, quirks included. Midoriya has confirmed this multiple times. As for what we do know, Deku is diagnosed quirkless and won't be getting a quirk. We've seen his hospital records from before he became a villain. He won't be getting a quirk by any biological means. Izuku bites his lip, wiggling his toes in his shoes. He knows his records match up with Deku's. He's also biologically quirkless, so he's incredibly glad all his information is in his reality and that it's not being questioned by his peers. That would be an awful lot of explaining he'd need to do to his Aizawa-sensei. One for all is clearly a secret here too, if the hush-hush way the detective and Principal Nizu had skirted around the topic was any indication, and not to mention how Izuku's possession of his All Might's quirk had been the factor that finally seemed to convince the two men of his innocence. Plus, he's positive if a Deku doppelganger spilled All Might's secret after Deku himself had already ruined his career, Izuku's not sure All Might would be very happy. From what he's gathered, All Might is already very not happy with him, which sorta hurts to know. But how can one Midoriya have a quirk and not the other? Aren't they the same person just in different realities? Uraraka asks without raising a hand. She's glancing calculatingly at Izuku, thoughtfully watching him. I don't understand. I don't know, Sensei shrugs, glancing sideways as Izuku in a thoughtful sort of way. I'd agree with you, but I know for certain Midoriya has a quirk. I've seen it, and I also know Deku doesn't have one. If he had a quirk at his disposal, he would have used it by now. If Deku did have a quirk at this point, he'd be a lot more dangerous and he'd know that. He'd want the world to know that. Villains like Deku thrive on fear. But sir, Ida's hand shoots up, and Aizawa-sensei PPS his head as an invitation for the engine quirk team to continue. If that's the case, how are we supposed to trust Midoriya? Where'd his quirk come from? I agree with you, Uraraka. If one Midoriya is diagnosed quirkless, shouldn't the other be too? Midoriya has a quirk, aren't we being a little bit too trusting? No, Sensei huffs, arms crossing over his chest. We know virtually nothing about the quirk that sent Midoriya here, and we know even less about his reality, so I can't tell you why one has a quirk and the other doesn't. Reality travel is a foreign concept, and we can't begin to understand it without more information that we have zero access to. What matters here is that Midoriya has proven his position in his reality. Not just with providing information that is parallel to ours, but with an ID card that was on his person when he arrived. But Sensei... Aizawa-sensei snaps his attention to Yaoyorozu, who instantly cuts herself off at his sharp look, before he glares around the room. Midoriya is not on trial, and he certainly wouldn't be on trial by students. All you need to know is that Midoriya has been cleared by 3 pro heroes and a lie detector quirk who have met, spoken to and determined that Midoriya is not Deku. End of story. There's no longer any question of if his story is viable or not. He's been cleared. The silence is so quiet it's almost loud to Izuku's ears. He hates this. He hates the looks they're shooting him, and sure, he's not being attacked anymore, but he'd almost prefer it to this. Sensei heaves a sigh, rubbing at his eyes with his thumb and middle finger. Look, the man calls attention, hand falling to cross over his chest. We might not understand everything right now, but we understand enough to make a logical decision regarding Midoriya's well-being. There are going to be quirks in this world that you won't understand. That's just how this world works. Midoriya is innocent, Deku is not. Now, for the time being, he's under Yui protection, and he will be my personal student. I highly suggest you all keep that in mind. That makes sense, Kirishima scratches at his head. I think? It's still scary though, Hagakure offers cautiously. I mean he is Deku, isn't he? He's not. Kaken defends before Aizawa-sensei can even open his mouth. You extras are thick-skulled. That's not Deku, and if any of you'd met the real Deku, you'd agree. You're taking this awfully personally, Ashido calls accusingly from across the room. What's the deal with that? You buddy-buddy with Midoriya already, Kaken? Shut the f*** up raccoon eyes. Kaken grits out dangerously, but doesn't bother adding anything else. The ashy-haired teen turns away abruptly, ignoring the questions entirely as he glares out the window. Izuku watches his childhood friend with a frown. Enough, Sensei snaps, all of you. There's a moment of tense silence, everyone's glancing around the room, looking at their friends to try and determine how everyone's feeling about the situation. Izuku feels a lot of eyes on him, but he doesn't dare look up. It's uncomfortable, it feels like he's under a microscope and 1A is dissecting him apart. Soon the silence lifts to low mutters and mumbles as the students chat amongst themselves, still glancing at Izuku every so often. It hurt more than he'd care to admit that they're clearly waiting for him to lash out or to try to harm them in some way. He can't help but feel the tug of longing that he's not a part of it. This isn't his class, even if it is. He should be sitting over in seat 18, chattering and theorizing with his classmates. He misses his class. Quiet, Aizawa-sensei calls from the front of the room after kindly letting them chat for a few minutes. He sounds tired, but his voice is clear and final, instantly drawing in everyone's attention, Izuku included. The man lets the silence ring for a second before finally speaking. Listen to me now, none of you have to trust Midoriya. That's not what this is about. I can't and won't force you to. That decision is entirely yours, but know that I do trust him. I get this is hard to believe, and you all have a right to feel what you feel in this situation. There is no right or wrong way to feel about something like this. However, that doesn't give you any right to take your frustrations or fear out on Midoriya. I know nothing's happened yet, this is merely a warning to all of you. He is not Deku. They are not the same. For the time being, he will be sitting in on all of my classes. That includes homeroom and heroics training. Midoriya will be around, and there will be consequences if I hear of any of you treating Midoriya any differently than you would your peers. Sensei. Izuku turns to look at him, nervously wringing his hands together. It's okay, No, Aizawa-sensei frowns. It's not okay. This is a class of pro-hero trainees, and if they can't treat an innocent individual who looks like someone they don't like with respect, they have no place in my class. You are not Deku, Midoriya. You won't be treated as a villain when you're not, and I'll make sure of it. Izuku stutters through his own thoughts, glancing nervously around the room. They all look fairly conflicted now, and Izuku hates that he's the one doing it. This is awful for them. He's a villain here and Aizawa-sensei is asking them, heroes in training, to ignore the fact and treat him like a normal person. It sounds ridiculous. Here's the deal, Sensei continues to the class, arms crossing over his chest. If you don't like or trust Midoriya, avoid him. It's simple. He won't be seeking you out, and if you want nothing to do with him, that's fine. If you're curious, ask him questions. He'll be shadowing me whether you like it or not, because this is the safest place for him. Aizawa-sensei draws in a breath, finally coming out from behind his desk and standing beside Izuku. His voice is curled with understanding. You're all afraid of Deku, and you should be. It's rational with what we've seen and know of the villain. He is a threat, but remember that if Deku gets word that he's here, Midoriya is a target. He's a sitting duck in this world, and he'll be in danger just as much as any of us. The bell rings, and Izuku is surprised by how fast homeroom went. If their schedule is the same in both realities, the class will be heading to math with Ectoplasm Sensei now. Aizawa Sensei leans against his podium, eyeing his students. They all remain seated despite the bell. It would be stupid to dismiss themselves, especially in Aizawa Sensei's class. Izuku's own class had only done it once, and they'd paid the price in terms of running suicide sprints. Lots and lots of running. Please keep this quiet for now, he says to the class, and everyone seems a little surprised at Aizawa Sensei using please. This is a hero school, and Deku has a lot of enemies. Midoriya doesn't. I'm not asking you to not say anything. You're welcome to talk amongst yourselves. I encourage it actually. Bottling things up does harm, so don't feel like you have to, but try to keep it confidential within the class. I will stop by the dorm common area after classes today, and you're welcome to bring up any questions or concerns at that point. Izuku bows his head and avoids looking at everyone. He can feel them staring, knows he has everyone's eyes on him, and it makes his skin buzz with nerves. He wonders if it's clicked yet that he'll be staying up in the apartment over the dorms with Aizawa Sensei and Present Mike. If they even know Present Mike lives there too. You'll have enough time to make it to Ectoplasm's class before the bell, so don't dawdle. Aizawa Sensei heaves a sigh. And just as a reminder, I will not be your teacher for heroics this afternoon. You'll have Vlad King and All Might guiding class, and you'll be working with Class 1B on some simulation exercises. Dismissed. The students stand slowly and are quick to gather their belongings. Izuku keeps his gaze ducked until Sensei continues loudly, Bakugo, you're with me for first PRD. Someone tell Ectoplasm that I have him. If he has questions, tell him to email me. There are a couple mumbled, yes senseis, as well as Ida promising to pass on the message. Aizawa Sensei watches them leave without saying anything else. When it's just the three of them left alone in the room, the underground hero calls their attention by clearing his throat. I think there's a lot the three of us have to discuss after what just transpired. Kaken glares, but Izuku just swallows nervously. Oh no. Shota can't say he expected homeroom to turn out quite like it did. He'd expected hesitance and concern, fear. He had expected that the student would react similarly to the teachers, but he'd known he has more control over the student than he does the teachers. He knows some of his students had seen Deku at the USJ before he'd pulled his Houdini act and disappeared without a trace, leaving a mess of destruction behind him. He knows that they'd gotten peeks at his face from afar, so it wasn't unrealistic for any of them to be able to ID him. He just hadn't expected anything to happen so fast. In hindsight, he probably shouldn't have let the fact Bakugo had met Deku previously slip his mind, but in forgetting, it had raised some very disturbing red flags. There was obviously some sort of connection between the two, not just Midoriya with his Bakugo in his reality. The cute, childlike nickname of Kaken that Midoriya had called him was hard to ignore, and Bakugo's recollection and reaction to the name was interesting. Midoriya's name for his own Bakugo had Shota's Bakugo recoiling as if it was familiar. And it wasn't like Bakugo was hearing the name for the first time, miffed and disgusted at a Deku lookalike calling him some cutesy foreign pet name. That was the reaction of someone who hadn't heard that specific nickname in ages. Like when Hizashi decides to be an a-hole and call him Shaken with the sole intention to get a rise out of him, which does always get on his nerves. What a stupid nickname. But that's beside the point. It was fear and hesitance all rolled into one snide scowl. Shota hasn't known these children for much more than a couple months at this point, but that's more than enough time to determine their personalities and characters. To pick them apart and come to conclusions of what he needs to do to help them, and what he needs to keep an eye on. Bakugo had always been a wild card, since that very first day. There weren't any acts of aggression or violence he'd seen, nor was there anything on his previous school records that were cause for concern. He'd never done anything over the top concerning in class, besides his sometimes quite hostile attitude at least, but there was just something about his character, his demeanor, that had Shota keeping a closer eye on him. There was familiarity in how he regarded Midoriya. How he'd looked at Midoriya and had been able to spot the difference between Deku and Midoriya with nothing more than the green-haired teen saying no more than 10 words. There was more to this. He missing something. Not just in Midoriya's reality, but theirs as well. He leads the two teen boys through the school, pausing outside the teacher's office and opening the door just enough to peek in and confirm that it's empty. He knows only himself and Hound Dog have first PRD free, and Hound Dog usually has business to attend to in the guidance office. Satisfied that the room is empty, Shota holds the door open for the two boys to enter. Midoriya walks a quick, nervous feet, whereas Bakugo is dragging his feet, eyes narrowed and unwavering on Midoriya. There's a conference room that Niza likes to use hidden away in the back of the office, and Shota suspects that the soundproof interior is probably the best place to have this conversation. He doesn't quite know what will come from this, but he has a bad feeling that Bakugo knows more. Then he'd let on. It had been about a month since the boy had been rescued from the League. They'd never really stopped to think about how Bakugo would come out of his time in the League's custody with Deku's civilian name, when no one had even heard whispers of it prior. Thinking about it now, it seems convenient. Not in the way that Shota thinks Bakugo has any hand in anything, but in the way that maybe the kid isn't telling them the whole truth. Shota will admit he was more focused on getting Bakugo to safety than thinking about the name the teen had muttered under his breath when he'd finally be rescued. His priority was tending to his student who'd spent 3 days in the hands of Japan's current most dangerous villains. Tsukachi, in turn, had jotted the mumbled name down and then seen to helping with evacuation, search and rescue, as well as cleaning up the aftermath of All Might's fight with the villain behind Shigaraki and the League of Villains. All for one, or something. Later, the police had run with the information given, taking it and running it through various databases. Anything they could dig up on Midoriya Izuku was valuable. He'd had no identity for almost an entire year, just captured villains grinning smugly and muttering one single word that proved his existence and threat level, Deku. There's not a lot the police can do with just a villain name, so since the teen had debuted in his own way of offering pro-hero weaknesses to villains asking, they hadn't been able to do anything. There's not much to search with a made-up name and no telling Ming information, not even a quirk to work with. The first they'd even seen Deku was at the USJ, and Shota was really the only one to get a decent look at him before he was gone. And even with that, he didn't quite manage anything useful when he'd glance over between villains challenging him, dark hair, an inky green, or perhaps even black. Dressed nice, sharp waistcoat and tie combo, with obvious lack of intention of joining in the fight. Maybe freckles. Short, scrawny and lean. He could tell the villain was young, but couldn't pinpoint anything past that, under 20 at least. It honestly probably should have been looked into further. When Shota thinks about it, they'd had no information on him whatsoever, and then suddenly they had a civilian identity courtesy of Bakugo Katsuki. How had he gotten so much after just 3 days of being captive? They hadn't thought to question Bakugo further. He'd been taken to the hospital and released to his parents after his statement had been taken. Shota hadn't even seen the kid again until he was going house to house and asking parents and guardians to trust Yui enough to allow their children into the dormitory program. They should have been smarter. They should have thought it through more. They should have thought, even if just for a second, about how Bakugo had known Deku's name. That's not the kind of information a villain would share with their captive, especially one like Deku who kept in the shadows. Deku kept himself out of the public eye, with nothing but the villain's name Deku being spoken of. Other villains took his proffered information and did his dirty work. So, how had Bakugo known? Unless there was more to this? There's a couch in the room and an armchair that Shota positions to face the two teenagers. The conference table is there too, but he doesn't bother using it. There's only the 3 of them, and he doesn't want too much space between them. The 2 boys perch on either side of the couch, Midoriya curled in tight like he had been at the police station, while Bakugo is gritting his teeth and glaring off to the side. Shota tries to carry his uninterested air, but he knows he looks more perplexed than he'd like. Which one of you wants to start? Shota drawls, hoping it comes off uninterested. Neither boy says a thing. Midoriya's eye flick nervously to Shota, and then Bakugo, then down to his lap where he's tugging at his fingers, and Bakugo just clenches his teeth harder. Shota worries for a second the blonde might break a tooth. Midoriya, Shota bites back a sigh, selection the one he thinks will break first. He's had no trouble explaining things thus far, so Shota hopes it continues. How do you know Bakugo? The teen startles at being spoken to, nervous eyes glancing up. We're classmates? I got that, Shota huffs, trying not to get annoyed at the dancing around the subject. How else? Unless you're telling me that you and Bakugo are just classmates in your reality, which seems odd considering the display I just witnessed in class. I doubt that's all you two are. I've believed you thus far. I hope you're not lying to me now, Midoriya. I'm not. Midoriya yelps hurriedly. He takes a second to compose himself after the outburst, rubbing anxiously at the back of his neck. We are classmates, like I said, it's just. We've known each other since we were little, I in my reality. My mom and auntie, Bakugo-san have always been friends. Since we were born at least. Shota lets that sink in before glancing at Bakugo whose eyes are narrowed, but not at anything in particular. Shota clears his throat and Bakugo's eyes flick towards him. And you? Ditto. Shota narrows his eyes. And you didn't think that was an important piece of information to share when you found out Deku's identity? There was a motive behind your kidnapping, Bakugo? You should have told us. Bakugo grits his teeth again, pointedly looking away from Shota. The man shuts his eyes in an attempt to calm himself down and not lash out at the teenager before him, blinking his eyes open and looking back at Midoriya. What else? We, the teen swallows, we've always gone to school together. Elementary, junior high, I don't know. I've always looked up to Kaken. He's got a strong quirk and even though he wasn't always, nice, I always knew he'd be a good hero. How can you still say that? After everything I did to you? Bakugo turns abruptly to Midoriya. You said you didn't get a quirk until the entrance exam. That means you were still quirkless when we were in school and I still. How the hell can you look at me now and say bullshit like that? It's not bullshit, Kaken. Midoriya rolls his eyes, like he's used to this. It's the truth. You're a good hero. Aizawa-sensei wouldn't have kept you in class if you didn't have any potential, and we both know that. I always knew you would be a great hero. I'm a fucking hole. I tormented you. You let me torment you. I said shitty things to you and you still call me that? You still believe that you still look at me like, I don't understand. Deku hates me, and for good fucking reason. Deku turned into a villain after. Why the hell didn't you? Shota suddenly feels like he's no long on the same wavelength as the two teenagers. After what, Kaken? Midoriya snarls, and it's the most emotion Shota's seen from the kid. In the negative, at least. His eyes are narrowed, challenging. After you told me to take a swan dive off a tall building and hope for a quirk in my next life? Shota's body tenses as those words register. What? You know exactly what I'm talking about. It happened to you too. I said that stupid FNG bullshit to you in both realities. The blonde roars, turning completely towards Midoriya and grabbing fistfuls of his uniform once again. Shota jolts to tear them apart, but pauses just as fast when, and you did. Midoriya breathes out, staring wide-eyed down at Bakugo. You did it. Bakugo's head is ducked, almost pressing between where his hands hold a bone-white grip on Midoriya's uniform. You fucking did it, Tezuka. Sheet. You left a stupid fucking suicide note under you stupid fucking red shoes on the ledge of that shitty bridge in the outskirts of town. They didn't care, the cops. They didn't even care enough to try and fish out your body. They didn't even try to find you. Not when you first went missing, and not when your note and shoes were found. You were dead. Pronounced dead. I thought you really did it, you jackass. But I'm not. He's not. Yeah, Bakugo scoffs, finally shoving Midoriya away. No sheet. Imagine my fucking surprise to come face to face with a dead guy. I went to your funeral. I was there with my mom consoling your mother after the service. You had some fucking nerve, Midoriya. You have no idea what that did to her. The blonde gives a tight nod. She was never the same after the cops showed up and told her what you'd done, what everyone thought you'd done. She wouldn't eat, wouldn't get out of bed. All she wanted to do was sleep. My mom had her admitted into the psych ward and she hasn't made any improvements. You were her entire fucking life and you gave it up. Gave her up all so you could go play villain. And you didn't even care. You didn't even ask about her. I would never. You're not Deku, Midoriya, Shota feels the need to remind. His head is spinning just listening to this, but he knows he can't let Midoriya spiral for something he didn't do. Bakugo, this is not your Midoriya Izuku. I know, the blonde spits, glaring at his teacher. You wanted an explanation, well here it is, sensei. I'm a piece of shit. Deku faked his own suicide and I believed he actually did it because I told him to. I've thought for months, almost a year, that he was dead. That it was my fault that he died because I told the BSRD to do it, and he did. It's all my fault. Expel me. Arrest me. I don't know. Kaken. Midoriya frowns. Listen, Bakugo manages out, voice tight with barely contained emotion as he turns towards Midoriya. I didn't mean it. I really didn't fucking mean it. I was stupid and an a-hole and you were an easy target. I just said it and didn't think. I didn't mean for you to. I didn't think you'd. Izuku, I'm sorry. I don't blame you, Midoriya whispers. I never did. I was more annoyed when you told me to. Honest. That day you went a little hard on my analysis book too. I was more upset about that. My copy in my reality is still waterlogged and burned. I had to rewrite the whole thing and it was super annoying. I only keep it for All Might's signature now. The green-haired teen pauses, seeming to notice he'd strayed from the topic. He's this in a breath, catching Bakugo's eyes again. I know you didn't mean it. I knew then. You were always a JRK, but you'd never gone that far. I knew it was more a show for your friends than anything else. If you meant it, you would have said it when we were alone. It hurt a lot to hear, but I think that was the point. I realized you wouldn't ever be my friend again, but I wouldn't jump just because you told me to. But you did, Bakugo wrinkles his nose. You went missing for 2 days and then that note showed up. We thought you were dead. I thought you were dead. I thought you killed yourself because of me, Izuku. It wasn't you, Midoriya sighs out with a shake his head. Oh, or it wasn't you in my reality. I don't know what happened to your Midoriya Izuku, but if he's anything like I was, a comment from you wouldn't have made him do anything drastic. I mean, I thought about it for like a second after. But I wouldn't. There's mom to think about and being a hero. And things started turning around for me that day. You know, you always said I couldn't be a hero, and some part of me really wanted to prove you wrong too. That might be why you're always too testy in class. Well, consider me proven wrong. Even if it's not your Bakugo Katsuki, it's one of them, Bakugo drawls, the corners of his lips twitching up faintly. Sensei said we're in the same class. In your world, at least. That means you really did get into Yui, even after we all. And our junior high sensei. That's real cool, Izuku. It was always your dream. Yeah, Midoriya laughs, rubbing the back of his neck in embarrassment. You hate it, but I don't think you hate me anymore. We're getting better at working together. I'm pretty sure you tried to kill me on the first day of school, and Aizawa-sensei was the only reason you didn't. We can work together now without trying to kill each other. Nothing like that's happened since the battle trials on the second day of school. Yeah, Bakugo raises an eyebrow, glancing back at Shota. The man himself can only shrug. Probably something else that'll give him a migraine and a heart attack simultaneously. He really should send hate mail for Midoriya's Aizawa Shota back with the kid. Maybe that'll be the kick in the butt. The other Aizawa needs to get his sheet together and help this child. That all sounds about right though, Bakugo snuffs. So analysis is a universal Midoriya trait then, eh? Midoriya shrugs. I've never stopped, no matter what you or anyone else said. It's useful. And dangerous, Shota adds casually. Both boys startled, like they'd forgotten he was in the room with them. I have a lot of questions. And we're going to be having a nice long chat later, both of you. Especially you, Bakugo. Midoriya winces, but Bakugo just steels himself like he's prepared for the worst. You can't expel him, sensei, the green-haired teen whispers. Oh. Shota pps his head to the side. Consequences are definitely in order from what he's heard, but he'd yet to decide if expulsion is the way to go. There's a lot to consider, but he can't just ignore something like this. And why not? I know what he did was bad, but he's not a villain. He will make a good hero. He's a good person. Why you can't punish him for something that happened so long ago, for something he did before he matured? I'm sure he's already been punishing himself. Don't defend me, Bakugo scoffs. I deserve consequences. If Sensei wants to expel me, so be it. If I'm arrested, I deserve it. I was idiot to you, and I deserve a punishment for that. That's so harsh for something you did as a kid. I was 14 years old, Izuku. I knew better. You didn't though, Midoriya shakes his head. No one ever stopped you. Seriously, Sensei, the teachers didn't care. I know enough now to believe that Deku and I grew up the same way. As something changed, but it wasn't that. And I know you're underground, so you've seen and you also have a less than ideal quirk, even if it's super cool. You know discrimination. Quirk discrimination is awful but quirkless discrimination if worse, and people don't care. Shota stays quiet as Midoriya clenches his fists. I know what Kaken did was bad, but his whole future shouldn't be ruined because he made one dumb comment to a quirkless kid when he never got reprimanded once since we were little kids. He should have known better, sure, but that doesn't mean he did. That doesn't mean anyone actually told him what he was doing was wrong. Besides, you decided yourself he had potential. I determined his potential before I had all the facts, Shota tells the teen slowly, then he reminds, as if Midoriya didn't already know, what Bakugo did was suicide baiting. And you and I both know it was more than one, Bakugo grits out. I may not have told you to take a swan dive, but I did bully you. Why you? Midoriya points a finger at Bakugo. Shut up. I'm trying to plead your case here. Then, Sensei, I really do know. It was wrong of him and he really shouldn't have said it. Trust me, I know what he did and how wrong it was. But I never took him seriously, and I doubt Deku did either. Midoriya draws in an almost shaky breath. I just don't think he should get expelled over it. He's changed, I can see that now. My Kaken's changed. He grew up, and he's not the same kid who told me to jump off a roof. The Kaken who told me to jump off a roof would never have apologized to me, but he did just now. You did. You're not that person anymore, Katsuki. Shota has that sick feeling again that this is yet another thing that Midoriya's Aizawa doesn't know about. Something else that clearly affected this child's life, whether for the better or for the worse, and he doesn't know. Bakugo had tormented Midoriya, had said unspeakable things, and yet they're still in class together. He apparently still pairs them together, from what he's gathered from Midoriya. He shouldn't get off free. I agree he deserves a punishment of some kind for what he did. You don't learn from your mistakes if you're not taught their mistakes. Midoriya shakes his head, hands now dripping the fabric of his uniform breathes, but he shouldn't be expelled. What he did was wrong, but it really shouldn't end his career as a hero before he's even had a chance to start. I've worked with Kaken in class. I know this is where he belongs, Sensei. Shota leans back in his chair and watches the two boys. He searches Midoriya first, for any dishonesty. It doesn't make much sense. He knows only what the teen has said about his own relationship with his own reality's Bakugo Katsuki thus far, and he can't say it's very positive. He still can't help but look for some sort of power imbalance between the two, Midoriya feeling like he has to please Bakugo for whatever reason, but he doesn't spot anything of the sort. He tries to locate anything that could be a reason he'd vouch so seriously for the bully who'd apparently suicide baited him. He doesn't find anything past the determined fire alit in green eyes. He's starting to think this is just Midoriya's personality. He wonders what the hell had to have happened to Deku to change him into the villain he is now. They're just so different, but they'd started out the same, according to what Midoriya has pieced together and what Bakugo has confirmed of Deku. When he turns his prying eyes onto Bakugo, they narrow in thought. Bakugo is watching Midoriya, expression wavering between confusion and exasperation. There's a distant fondness buried in his gaze too, and Shota can only imagine Deku was at some point just like Midoriya. It's obvious these two did know each other prior to Deku's apparent suicide, which he will be talking to Tsukachi about because what the F dash? Did he not think it was useful to inform everyone that the villain thereafter is a presumed dead quirkless kid? Shota shakes his head, lifting a hand to drag through his hair. The action draws in both teenagers' gazes. You won't be expelled, he decides tightly. Midoriya shoots him a thankful grin, while Bakugo's shoulders slump slightly like he'd been prepared to shoulder through an expulsion lecture. Midoriya has pleaded your case, and knowing what I do now of your and Deku's relationship now, I doubt he's done with you. You're safest here. Shota pauses, looking between the two, picking their expressions apart minutely. He heaves a sigh, rubbing at his eyes. I've seen the changes in your character since the start of the year as well. It's obvious you are not the same hot-headed brat who threw that baseball on the first day of school. That doesn't change what you've done, the harm you've caused, whether meaning to or not, but your attitude and willingness to accept blame and punishment now has opened doors for change and redemption. Thank you, Sensei. Bakugo bows his head, despite the fists settled on his thighs. That said, Shota clicks his tongue, you will be getting consequences for your actions. What you did was wrong. What you say always has a chance of hurting deeper than you can know, which is why you need to do better. You want to be a hero. A hero doesn't aim to hurt someone, and it's unacceptable that you have. Discrimination is not a good trait for a hero to have, and we will be working on that now that it's been brought to my attention. Now, I assume I don't need to tell you that if I ever hear of you saying anything of the sort again, it'll be an automatic expulsion. Yes, Sensei, Bakugo mutters dutifully. Good. Shota continues as if the teen hadn't said a word. Now, you'll be on house arrest for 1 week. In which time I will be assigning you chores and essays on quirklessness and discrimination that will, ideally, expand your field of view. You will have those completed by the time your arrest is finished, half but your work, and we'll start from square one. Got it? It'll be your time you're wasting if you don't put in the effort to be better. I got it, Bakugo snaps. Shota doesn't take it to heart. That's an overwhelmed snap, not a blatant anger one. In addition, Shota narrows his eyes, you're going to be having mandatory bi-weekly visits with Hound Dog. This is not a punishment, it's for your well-being and it's not up for debate any longer. You refused this when I suggested it at the beginning of the year, but I will not back down a second time. A good hero will not resort to anger in the way you tend to do. You'll end up like Endeavor and the world doesn't need two of him. There's nothing wrong with needing some help dealing with things, Bakugo. The suicide, feigned or not, of a childhood friend is traumatic. Being kidnapped is traumatic. Bakugo looks like he wants to fight it again, but then the boy pauses before he says anything and glances to the side where Midoriya is glancing between the two of them. The blonde grits his teeth again, crossed his arms tightly across his chest and slumps back into the couch. Fine. Shota gives a satisfied nod before glancing at Midoriya. Ideally, I'd be putting you into counseling as well. What I've heard so far is troubling, problem child. It's a lot to shoulder alone. And if it weren't for your unique situation, I'd insist. I'd ask if you've seen anyone about this in your reality, but I'm starting to question your Aizawa's competence. Midoriya lets out a startled snort of laughter. My Aizawa-sensei is a good teacher too. He's doing the best he can. The teen shrugs before quieting and hesitating. He doesn't know, so you can't blame him. You should tell him. Shota scratches at his head. We can't help you if we don't know what's going on. I can't help where you're from. I can only make changes here. If he's anything like me, Midoriya, he'd want to know so he can improve your learning environment. For both of you, it sounds like you've both struggled with your past and present together. And maybe, the child shrugs, hunching his shoulders up to his ears as a defense. Shota supposes it's better than a straight-up no. It's not like he can force the kid into anything, and he can't pass the message on either. He'll have to put his trust in the fact Midoriya seems like he has a good head on his shoulders. All right, Shota sighs. House arrest will start tomorrow. Normally I would make you catch up on everything you miss by yourself as part of the punishment, but you can have today to get a head start on gathering the classwork being assigned over the week you're out. I doubt any of the other teachers will have a problem giving you the work you'll be missing. It's up to you though. Wow. Midoriya grins. That's so nice. When you gave us house arrest after the preliminary hero license exam, You didn't let us do that. We had to catch up all on our own. You were really mad though. Shota blinks, eyeing the teenager. He hasn't had to put anyone on house arrest yet, but it's really not surprising that in Midoriya's universe both he and Bakugo were probably the first. Ha! Bakugo PPS an eyebrow, what are you on about? Oh, Midoriya laughs to himself, snickering behind his hand, right? We fought after the exam, and Sensei caught us. I'm sure we would have had it worse if All Might wasn't there to cover for us, but, Sensei was unimpressed. Bakugo blinks. All Might. I'm sensing a theme here with you and your Aizawa not knowing things that are clearly important. Shota sighs heavily, waving a dismissive hand in Bakugo's direction. Do I even want to know what that was about, problem child? Ah, Midoriya shakes his head until his curls are covering his eyes. Probably not, Sensei. It wouldn't make much sense here anyways. Bakugo is glancing at Shota now, an eyebrow ped in confusion. Shota waves him off a second time. He doesn't have the time, nor the patience to explain the alternate reality can of worms to Bakugo right now. Okay then, the man drawls with a sigh. Second PRD will be starting soon, and I have to teach the third years. Bakugo, you know where you're going, and I suggest you take today to get yourself ready. You'll need it, Midoriya offers helpfully. A week is a long time. Yeah, the ashy-haired teen huffs, already standing up. He glances back at Midoriya. Can we talk later? Midoriya bites his bottom lip and glances at Shota, clearly questioning. We'll see. Shota leans forwards, exhaustion creeping up on him. He doesn't know how he's going to get through the rest of the day, which includes introducing Midoriya to 2 more classes of heroes in training. Now, get to class before you're assigned more punishments for tardiness. Bakugo grits his teeth, but arches into a bow anyways. Yes, Sensei. Thank you, Sensei. Have a good day, Kaken. Midoriya calls as Bakugo walks stiffly to the door. The ashen-haired teen pauses, glancing back. He glares a lesser glare than Shota's used to seeing before ping his head in response. Yeah. You too. Try not to get yourself killed here. And then the kid's gone. Shota raises an eyebrow at his departure, glancing over at Midoriya. He's not expecting to see the kid grinning widely. Kaken's so nice here. He really is very different to my Kaken, Sensei. I don't think you'll have quite as many problems as my Sensei does. How that is nice, Shota will never know. Midoriya really is a complex puzzle that he needs to solve. He's going to make it his mission, and he'll find a way to report back to his reality so the Aizawa Shota over there gets his head out of his butt and actually notices the kid. Right? He offers drilly. Well, come on. Class will be starting soon, and it won't be a good example if we show up late. You'll be sitting at my desk for second and third PRD since both classes are full. I don't have anything for you to work on today, but I can ask the first-year teachers to make extra copies of their assignments, if you'd like. Thank you. Midoriya bows his head, standing up after Shota and following him to the door. I don't know if time is passing in my reality, but I don't want to fall behind, and there's no harm in getting ahead if it's not, right? Why does that not surprise him? Isolated in a reality that's not his own, and he's worried about falling behind in his own classes. There's really no doubt. Midoriya Izuku is a problem child to the fullest extent.